So I was not that good. Texas is back to being mediocre as the Cowboys ride a little closer to a Big 12 title game. Lane Kiffin goes home. What's the outcome? We're still awaiting. Caleb Williams goes to the house again and again and again and again. And how about the Battle of Wills in Starkville? But Will Anderson won't be denied. And maybe, just maybe, there is a best team in the ACC. And despite all that is good and interesting and exciting in college football, more fake injuries, we think. Let's not judge. Welcome to the Voice of College Football on a Saturday night weekend wrap up week 7. Still important games to be decided. And if not important, at least interesting, intriguing in Knoxville. 8:42 to go at Neyland Stadium. Tennessee's got the football. They trail 31-26. They have trailed basically the entire game. But they are as close as they've been. And this has been a good one, as I anticipated. Ole Miss and Tennessee. We welcome in your comments, your questions, your debate topics, as always here at the Voice of College Football. And, of course, the phone lines will be open at 860-499-3332. I'm going to go through the comments. I'm going to go through the scores in progress as we wrap it up for a week 7. We were all excited about week 6. This time last Saturday night, I had so many people calling in telling me it was just the greatest day of college football and this is the best college football season ever. After what we've witnessed today, do we still feel that way? Any great outcomes? Maybe our best game of the day is still being played in Knoxville, and that's not going to most likely impact a championship at all. We've got the calls coming in already. You guys don't even want me to give you my thoughts on the day in college football. We'll get to it, of course. Let's go. Let's get started. Who knows how many people we've got on the line? I always appreciate you guys jumping on the line immediately, and I will post the phone number on the ticker at the bottom of the screen here soon, but keep in mind, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, the 3 most effective ways to contribute here to the Voice of College Football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV. And, of course, the Super Chat contribution is on as well. We appreciate all of you. You don't have to contribute financially to be accepted and loved and cherished here at the Voice of College Football. It's just about whatever your contribution is. Please smash the like button, share these videos out on social media. Just flat out tell people that we're here talking college football with you every day. And we kick off our calls here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Michael. Boy, you got to be a happy man.
Yeah, what did I tell you was going to happen earlier in the week? You said that was not going to happen.
What did you tell me was going to happen? That was.
Did I not say? Did I or did I not say Purdue was going to beat Iowa today?
I don't recall telling you that it was not going to happen.
Well, you said it was less. It wasn't a good chance. I mean, the thing you said, it might have been a trap game, but you said the IU, Ohio, Michigan State might have been a better game and stuff like that. I'm telling you, Purdue gave Iowa a dose of their own medicine today. And that's what teams need to do to beat Iowa. Whether or not it happens the rest of the year, who knows? But as of right now, Purdue's in the driver's seat for the Big Ten West, aren't they, in your opinion?
Well, it doesn't matter what my opinion is. They are. Logistically, they're, depends how you look at it. Minnesota technically is because they've got the tiebreaker on Purdue. So if they tie for the Big Ten West, then Minnesota's got it. But you've got Iowa out of the way, and Minnesota still has to play Iowa. I'd have to look at the Big Ten Eastern Division opponents that you both have to play. But yeah, so now we've got a three-way tie for first place. Yes, a three-way tie for first place in the Big Ten Western Division. That excites me. No, congratulations, Michael. Congratulations.
Yep.
It was an amazing game.
So how impressed was you? How impressed was you with today? And how surprised was you that Braun played 3 quarterbacks? I was surprised. But yet they were talking about it might happen this week. I didn't know so.
Yeah, that did surprise me. I didn't anticipate that. I would also have to say that, again, not to mislead you, I was not surprised. Now, I picked Iowa to win, but I did take Purdue to cover those 11 points. So I thought it would be a close game. And, of course, Purdue made it a not-so-close game. That was a dominant defensive performance. And Iowa gave us I know that I made the comment last week because I heard a number of national guys say that now that Iowa got past Penn State, that it was a free ride and smooth sailing to the Big Ten championship game. And I pegged the Purdue game as the remaining game, along with Wisconsin, as bumps in the road for Iowa. But yeah, a touchdown, 1 touchdown on the road. That's a heck of a performance.
Yeah, so I think they're like 8th nationally in scoring defense. I've seen that during the game today, I think it was. At one point, or I don't know if you've seen it or not, though.
I did not.
So another thing I was going to ask you too is, was you kind of surprised at how the IU Michigan State game came out today? Even though I picked Michigan State to win, considering how sloppy of a game it was.
Well, I didn't see any of the game. I just saw a few highlights. That game, I guess, would have surprised me less than any game in the country because I had it pretty well pegged because I took Indiana in 5 points and I took Michigan State to win. So if anything, I had that down to a T. So Michigan State got by a team that I thought might be an issue.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just looking at the schedule here. I guess Iowa gets Minnesota on November 13th and stuff like that. But do you think Purdue can make it 2 in a row against Wisconsin next week?
Can they win on the road at Wisconsin?
No, make it 2 in a row next week.
Yeah, winning at Wisconsin, right?
No. They play Wisconsin at Ross State Stadium next week.
Oh, they're at home against Wisconsin. Week. Oh, nice.
Yes.
Sure.
Yep. And what I predicted at the beginning of the season, do you think it's still out of the realm of possibility? Where I predicted them to be 9-3 or worse 8-4?
What are they right now? 4-2?
Yes.
Well, they can beat everyone on the schedule, and I thought that even before today's game. I don't think they're going to.
Maybe Ohio State, though.
I don't think so. But I'm going to say, let's see, you're 4-2 right now. I'm going to say that Purdue's going to finish 7-5.
So you see him dropping 3 of the last 6 games in.
Yeah, I'm going to say, well, they've got Wisconsin at home. You know what? I'll go 8-4.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. What is it with Nebraska? It seems like they play a good game, but it seems like is it me or they just can't close the games out or something? Or is it just like one key play that changes it to where Nebraska just gives up or something?
Well, it's a combination of mistakes, physical mistakes on the field, mental mistakes more than anything on the field. But I also don't think that their game management from their coaching staff and Scott Frost is that amazing. I posted a video after the game, instant analysis, and I went through a sequence in the fourth quarter in which I thought Nebraska made a number of mistakes when they were down 21-16 in that game.
Mm-hmm.
They had the ball inside the 5-yard line. They had 4 plays inside the 5-yard line, and they just weren't very good play calls. And then I find it curious that On fourth and 10, they go for it inside the final 7 minutes of the game, down by 5, and choose not to kick a field goal on 4th and 10. But on 3rd and 12 on another series, they ran. They went for a running play, which how many times are you going to pick up 12 yards on a running play on 3rd and 12? That's probably 10% of the time. So I would think that would have been setting them up to go for it on 4th down. They were in the red zone. That would have set them up to go for it on 4th down because they made 8 yards on the 3rd down play. That got them to 4th and 4. What do you think they did on 4th and 4 after they just went for it on 4th and 10? On 4th and 4, they didn't go for it, and they missed a field goal.
Does it sound like does it kind of feel like they're linking as Kyle Frost is he's starting to get harder and harder each week?
I would think so. You can only rest on playing better and being better, but still losing. That can only go on for so long. And it's been impressive that they are better. There's no doubt they're better. This is the best they've played under Scott Frost. This is the best they've played since somewhere in the 2015 range. But, at some point you got to beat somebody.
But who knows? We'll see what happens. Is Arkansas who we thought they were since they've dropped 3 straight now? Or is that just a fluke?
Arkansas is a good team. They're a decent team. We overestimated them, or some people overestimated them when they won those games against Texas and Texas A&M. They're a good team. Georgia's a whole different deal. And then the last 2 weeks, they've played close games. They could have beaten Ole Miss. They had a 2-point conversion to win the game. And then today they got outclassed by Auburn, but they're a roughly top 25 team.
Not bad. I was just wondering stuff like that. All right, then, Mark, I know you got a lot of other callers and stuff. Thanks for talking my call.
Well, thank you, Michael.
My call.
Congrats. Boiler up.
Thanks. Boiler up.
This is especially when I love college football. Michael has been here with us for ages, years. Purdue fan, usually unranked. They have their bowl seasons. They have their non-bowl seasons. And they come through today. They go on the road. They beat the number 2 team in the country. This is not Clemson. This is not Ohio State where they win these kind of games like 5 times a year. No. So this is the joy of college football right there. In its essence right there. And Ole Miss is still up 31-26, and they've got the football. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is Emmanuel.
Hey, Manuel. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I am nice to meet you. I may be the only Pac-12 fan, I don't know, maybe in the world. But
don't tell me
I had
that.
A question in regards to this. It seems like it.
Please don't tell me that. I do know that, yes, my Pac-12 videos don't do quite as well as the other ones. So I think those are a lot of other college football fans that just feel sorry for the Pac-12 videos that don't do too well. But, let's see. Arizona State's playing Utah tonight, 14-7, almost halftime. Okay, well, that's a big game. So what you got for us?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I was watching Oregon and Cal yesterday.
Yep.
And Cal gave them everything they can handle.
Sure
it was
did.
A very close game.
It was a good game. I watched it.
Yeah, it was entertaining. And, Cal's like 1-4, I think, going into the game. Not a good season. And it just seems like it seems like 1 week they'll Stanford wins 42-24. And then the following week they lose 24-42. It's like no one has consistency. And I was just thinking, if you put Penn State or you put Iowa, I think Georgia and Alabama, those are the best teams in the country. But if you put, let's say, the teams that have hype right now, Iowa, even though they lost, or Penn State in the Pac-12, do you think that they would run the table or they would lose a couple games?
I don't think they would lose a couple games. I think they might trip up. I think they'd probably go 8-1. That would be my That would be my estimation. That would be the highest probability, especially if Penn State in the Pac-12, 8-1 record. But if they went 9-0, I would not be surprised if they could beat Oregon. And there's a collection of teams that are okay on a given game. Certainly, Penn State would be capable, or Iowa, of losing to Arizona State, but most likely they would not. And I will argue the point that there are no consistent teams in the Pac-12. I think Arizona is extremely consistent. I think the Arizona consistency is I can count on Arizona being practically the worst team in the country every week. So that's the consistency.
Geez. Well, that's true. I mean, well, no, that's not correct, because I believe UConn may give you a run for your money.
Worst Power 5 team in the country. When you lose, when you can't score a point against Colorado, when you lose to them 34-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just can't I don't know what I'm watching, because yesterday was really competitive, but then I get to thinking, am I just being entertained by subprime college football because both teams aren't that good that they're making it a competitive match? Or is this a pretty decent game? I guess that's what I was asking myself yesterday with Oregon and Cal. What do you take from it when you watch yesterday's game?
Well, that's what's confusing is we know what happened when Oregon went out to Ohio State. And I can't dismiss that in any way. Do I think that there were certain circumstances involving Ohio State not being on top of its game and all that, and we can make all sorts of excuses, and most of them are probably valid, but Oregon still went out there and won the game. And I think when it all shakes out that Ohio State's going to be a top 5 to 10 team in the country. So that's a legitimate win, certainly. But, everything else just adds up as a weak conference. I don't know what to make out of that. Now that Oregon, they really haven't played a good game other than that game. We know what happened against Stanford. The Arizona game was a game in the fourth quarter. I saw the, this game last night. I think that this conference is somewhere in between what the American Conference has been the last few years. I'm not talking about this year because the American Conference isn't that good this year. But when it's been better, when Memphis was good and UCF, it's somewhere between there and, the rest of the Power 5.
Like between there and the Big 12?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it just breaks my heart seeing, because there's so much talent out in California, and particularly in Southern California.
Yeah.
And it just leaves, So I really grew up, Arkansas and USC fan. And anyway, I'll let you go. But hey, really I guess I'll leave you with this thought. Scott Frost, I think, is going to be a great coach, just not at Nebraska. I see him in the SEC.
Oh, wow.
If he would go to the SEC, I think with the athletes he can get there, I think his system would work. Like if he went to South Carolina, or he went to who's hurting for a coach.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know who would hire him in the SEC. Based on what he's failed to do at Nebraska, I don't know who would hire him. Maybe South Carolina would. Maybe Vandy would. But obviously they're with first-year head coaches, so they're not going to fire their coaches right now. Missouri's a possibility at some point, but the other programs are. I don't think that they're going to dip down to Scott Frost. If Tennessee needed a coach, and again, I'm going to a first-year head coach, but I just don't see where he's a prime candidate for a big job anymore.
Do you think his biggest problem is not being able to recruit at Nebraska? Because that's what I seem to be hearing. because his system works at UCF with all the athletes out there, and he just doesn't seem to be able to attract those kind of athletes to the speed to Nebraska.
Well, if you look at the overall talent level at Nebraska, he should be winning more. They recruit as well as Iowa and Wisconsin, and they have since he's been there, and he inherited a roster that was just as good as theirs. But yeah, maybe the talent acquisition and the style of play doesn't mesh, but I don't see where they play that much different football than, they certainly look different than Iowa on offense, but they don't look much different than Northwestern, Illinois before Brett Bielema got there, Purdue. Play a very similar style of offense. I think almost everybody in the country plays a pretty similar style of offense. There's only a few outliers. If we watched this Ole Miss drive right now, and we took every play, the genius of Lane Kiffin is the individual plays and the matchups and setting up the plays. But in terms of the sets, the spread formation and the four wides and all that, and the RPOs, and sticking the football in the running backs, in riding the running back and watching the defensive end commit, all this is just repeated over and over and over by most of these teams. It's become the offense in college football. Certain guys are better at, look at Steve Sarkisian. He was a genius last year with the Alabama offense, and today their offense did not look good. So even though he's considered the best or one of the best play callers in college football, he wasn't today.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Talking about the drive right now with Ole Miss, Plumlee came in.
Yeah, I saw Matt Corral was down, and I didn't notice if he got back up or took the next step, or so Plumlee came in. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's one guy that I think should have transferred. He's a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, and he is.
Corral's just.
What's odd about Plumlee?
It's kind of like the JT Daniels.
Yeah, what is odd about John Rice Plumlee is that they transitioned him to slot receiver for bowl practice last year, and they played him in the bowl game, and he played well. He caught a bunch of passes.
Oh yeah,
he caught the key passes in the game-winning drive. So I thought he was the next Braxton Miller. Made the transition from quarterback to slot receiver, and they were going to use him all over the place, but he doesn't get much playing time.
No, I'm really surprised. What I thought that they should have done was have, in some plays or trick plays, have both of them in.
Oh yeah.
Put him in and have Plumlee throw from a different angle.
Yeah, sometimes that's the secret. If you have the throwing ability of a quarterback, like he clearly does, he's not a great quarterback, and that's one of the reasons why he's no longer one. But he's good. He can throw a football. But then you design trick plays, then you take the whole aspect of decision making off the table for that former quarterback, and that's probably what led to them no longer being a quarterback, is that they were not good at making those decisions. But they don't need to make decisions anymore. They just, throw to the one guy.
Yeah, but I mean, I would have liked to have at least seen it one time this season where Corral passes it to Plumlee at the wide receiver position, and Plumlee looks for someone. I mean, they could have got really creative. They got two phenomenal quarterbacks, and one of them is super athlete. Well, both of them are super athletes. So, but Lane Kiffin knows a lot more than I do for sure.
All right, man. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Of course. Hey, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, have a good
night. Bye.
Injury or not injury? Here we've got another one. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is the real MVP. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How's it going?
That's
Besides,
good. Hey, it's going.
you took a loss today, but besides that,
Hey, there's no shame in losing to the best team in the country at their home stadium. No shame whatsoever.
okay.
If you told me when we hired Mark Stoops that we'd be number 11 facing the number 1 team in the country for a probable chance to make the SEC championship game, I would have took it 100 out of 100 times. We lost. Congrats to Georgia. They played better than us. They're a great team, and they're going to have great goals and maybe win the title this year. There's no shame in losing to Georgia. Let me ask you this, Mark, since there's a lot of controversy, I guess, about it. What did you think about Mark Stoops calling the timeout?
I can't say I know what you're talking about. Mark Stoops called a timeout when? At the end of the game?
3 seconds left in the game.
Oh, well,
it was 30-7. We were at the 1 yard line.
Yeah, so I did not see that. He called a timeout to try to score?
Yeah.
I have no issue with that. He's
okay. Well, there's a lot of people on YouTube, Georgia fans saying, "Oh, it's unethical. You should just take a knee here. There's no point. You could get somebody hurt." Like, you play football to score, man. Play football to win the game. You got to score points.
I have no issue with either approach. I have no issue with either approach. Either saying, the game's over, we don't want to get people hurt, and we're done, and we give up, and that's the end of the game. Or from the other standpoint, if Georgia had the ball, them saying, okay, we're running out the clock, we're not going to score, even though we've got the ball down to the 5 yard line, we're not going to score. Or saying, we're going to continue to run our offense and run the football, and you need to stop us until the clock hits double zeros. I have no issue with either one. Just be consistent.
Right. I agree with that 100%. I mean, there was obviously some bad things that happened in the Kentucky game from a Kentucky standpoint. Mental errors costed us, just being bullied around. We couldn't run the ball, which nobody can do, but we really couldn't run the ball at all. But there was some positives. Will Levis this was probably his best game this season because everybody knew he had to throw in, and he was able to complete a lot of good balls. We had multiple sustained drives against the best defense we'll play this year. So it is what it is. It is what it is in terms of that. But again, congrats to any and all Georgia fans that are listening to this right now. Now, there are some other games I would like to talk about.
Okay.
I'd like to get
one last thing I'll say about
somewhere.
before you move on to these other games, it was a 14-7 game at half.
I'm aware.
You didn't get just annihilated like Arkansas did from the opening snap. It was a decent game. But they separated.
Yeah, that's why they separated. I think their depth really showed compared to ours, and they're just elite, all positions. I don't see them losing this year. They're my pick to win it right now. I mean, Brock Bowers. I know he's a freshman, but that man, if he could enter his name in the NFL draft and he would get picked. I mean, elite player. But I would like to give some love to the little guys, some under the radar upsets, like UL Monroe. They won today. They beat Liberty, who's 5-1. That was a big upset. I'd like to also give. Who else was it? I'd like to give Baylor some love. They beat BYU. BYU, number 19 in the country. Mark, thing that he's been looking out for 2 or 3 weeks. Got to give Baylor some love. They should be ranked. I hope they become ranked. They're 5-1?
Yes.
Are they 5-1 or 6-1, Mark? Okay. Yeah, they should be ranked.
5-1, I believe. Maybe 6-1.
Yeah. UTSA. They're 7-0. I know they haven't played anybody good, but they're having a great season for them. So congrats to those guys. And UConn finally won a game. And Northwestern. They both won a game.
Well,
and
Northwestern's
Mark,
won 3. Who did UConn beat?
UConn beat Yale.
Okay. The mighty, what is it, the Bulldogs of Yale? I believe
Yes.
so.
Well, hey, anybody united UConn. Anybody. They lost to Vanderbilt. On a more serious note, though, how do you think our friend George is doing?
Part of me worries about George, but part of me doesn't worry about George because George is George, and George is, he's lived a long life. He's lived through quite a bit. So, shoot, he's lived through 4 and 8. He can live through this.
This is a tough loss today. I mean, how do you give up 49 points to an LSU team? They had 330 some yards rushing the ball today.
Yeah, Todd Grantham's job status needs to be reconsidered. It should have been reconsidered after last season. In the offseason, I felt strongly that they should have moved on.
Well, that's a reason why people don't like Dan Mullen, because at a certain point when Todd Grantham isn't doing his job well and the head coach refuses to fire him, you might have to look at the head coach saying, hey, man, why aren't you firing this guy for not doing your job? Because Florida's decent for how great their offense was, which was elite last year. Their defense was horrible last year. And that was Todd Grantham's fault. And this year, it's not looking any better for Florida. I mean, they didn't look good against. Tennessee played a good half of the football against them. In Tennessee, they had those 2 games, but
that Tennessee
good against Ole Miss
Tennessee
right
win for Florida is looking better and better all the time. That game and the Alabama loss are the high point of the season. It's what they've done recently that's been pretty bad.
What happened for Texas against Oklahoma State? I didn't see anybody really picking Oklahoma State to win this game, but yet Oklahoma State, their defense, from what I saw, bits of the game, their defense stepped up and was able to hold Texas's explosive offense to basically nothing. Now, Robinson obviously got his yards running the football because he's just an absolute monster on the ground, but I don't know what happened with their passing attack at all. Did you see any of the game, Mark?
Oh, I watched just about all of it. I really wanted to see Oklahoma State and Texas, so I watched that, especially in the second half. It got interesting. Texas had a opportunity. They had the ball in the red zone. They were up 17-3. They came very close to making it 24-3, but pick 6 and they were back in the game. Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State had a quarterback / passing attack, then they would be serious. They got the ground attack. They've got an offensive line that, at least based on what I watched today, and this was the first time I really watched Oklahoma State play, their ground game with Warren is really good. He ran for 154 yards in the second half. Jalen Warren, he ran for almost 200.
Easily.
And the defense just wrecked Texas, just wrecked the offensive line, clamped down on the receivers. They got a pretty good team.
Yeah, I'll give Stark a few more years. Well, everybody should give him a few more years because this is his first year, but I want to see him with his players and his talent. But their defense needs a lot of help. A lot of help. Iowa lost today. That was probably the upset of the day. Shout out to the Purdue man who was the last caller. Big win for him. Big win for Purdue. Always has. Purdue's never great, but they always feel like they always beat one great team a year. Like they beat Ohio State a few years ago. They beat Wisconsin, I think, one time. why I like the sport, man. Purdue teams like Purdue who occasionally get a big one and shake up the picture of the college football playoff. Because now, well, Mark, let me ask you this: if Iowa wins out, well, if Iowa wins out, are they guaranteed in still?
I would hope so.
Or
you'd have to draw me up some kind of scenario in which they wouldn't be. Now, if Georgia's undefeated, Oklahoma's undefeated, Wake's undefeated, and then you've got a Pac-12 champion, Oregon, with one loss, then you've got a debate on your hands. But other than that, Cincinnati, throw them into the mix, undefeated. No, so not guaranteed, but you can always draw up a scenario to kick out a team. So no, I can't guarantee them a spot because I just threw out 6 teams that would have a argument.
I got you. Well, I'm looking at the score of this game. I mean, the Wisconsin's looking. Well, obviously we thought they were good, but they fell 1-3. They called in final and off the radar. They're 3-3. They beat Army today, which was a good win for them. I mean, Army was 4-1. They're a solid football team. I mean, Wisconsin could give Iowa some trouble this year. I don't think it would be as big an upset as it would have been before this game happened, and with Iowa losing and not controlling their own destiny. Big Ten West is a whole lot unclear today.
Wisconsin only won that game 20-14.
Yeah, it was 14-0 for a while, but then like in the I saw mostly the second half of it because every game I wanted to watch was basically coming a blowout. But Army just slowly chipped away in the fourth quarter. They got 2 touchdowns in the fourth and had an onside kick to get it, but they hit the Wisconsin got so hard. I mean, I thought they were going to lose the ball and get the ball back to get a chance to score, but
that Big Ten Western Division is just going to continue to unfold, I think, like it did today. I just think there are more losses to be traded back and forth. And no, not one team, I didn't think it before today, with Iowa is going to just march through the conference schedule. I think we're going to have like a 2-loss team win the division.
Well, let me ask you this. If a team from the East, it used to be a team from either the West or the East, they play each other, they're basically guaranteed in all scenarios. If a team from the East lost with Iowa or Wisconsin, are they guaranteed a spot? Like, what's the odds of them getting in? Like Michigan. They lose to Wisconsin in the title game, and they're 12-1.
Wait, you're putting Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship against who? Michigan?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Wisconsin's got some serious work to do, but again, they've played themselves back into possibility. Believe that or not, people out there. Wisconsin's only got 2 losses in the Big Ten, and now everybody else has 1. So yeah, they could play themselves back into it and win the division. So you got Wisconsin, and they're going to be like 9-3 if they run the table. 9-3, playing a undefeated Michigan team in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this way: who would get in over? Let's say Georgia beat Alabama in the SEC title game, and Wisconsin beat Michigan in the Big Ten title game. Who would get in for that 4th spot in that scenario? Just those
between Michigan and Alabama.
Yeah.
So Michigan's 12-1. They lost the Big Ten championship game. Alabama's 11-2. They lost the SEC. Well, yeah. It's a great scenario. I'm going to think that Alabama's going to, as long as the game is close against Georgia, that they're going to get the nod.
Yeah. Because what it's feeling like to me this season is we're going to have the first 2-loss team get into the playoffs.
I kind of hope so.
I kind of hope so too. I think it would open the door for more things, but if I think there's going to be a lot of people get upset if it's like Alabama, for example, and they get in over Cincinnati. Now I know Cincinnati doesn't have the resume, but I feel like for the perception of it would really hurt. And I think do you understand what I'm trying to say, Mark?
What's going to
how people are saying?
keep
Sorry,
going?
what?
I'm
With
trying to
how
follow
people are
where you're
saying
headed.
Well, basically, people have been saying Cincinnati shouldn't deserve to get in there because they were undefeated. They're going to win 25 out of their last 26 games. And only for a 10-2 Alabama team to get in there, people are going to feel like Cincinnati, or a group of 5 team, has no shot. They can never get in, and we need to change the playoffs instead of 2024, 2025 until next year in 2022. That's all I had to say about that.
I'm trying to make a comparison as we speak between Michigan and Alabama under that scenario. Now, just about everybody watching this right now and listening believes that Alabama is better than Michigan and that they should be selected for the playoff. But if you look at who these two teams would have beaten and lost to at that point, so basically it looks something like this. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else decent. LSU, Florida. So Michigan's best wins would be Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin. And their loss would, of course, have been to Wisconsin. They would have played them in a rematch. Alabama would have beaten Ole Miss, Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and LSU. But they lost to Georgia and Texas A&M. So it's quite a muddled comparison.
Can you? I'm sorry, I don't know what muddled means.
It's complicated. It's muddy. It's
okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you basically
muddled is a word I haven't heard.
Yeah. If you grew up in the 1970s and 80s, you probably would have heard it. But so yeah,
sorry, Mark. I can't do that.
When people throw those scenarios at me, obviously they're sitting in a room and going to be there all night trying to figure out who should be in and who shouldn't be. So I can only take a stab at it off the top of my head. But you could run all sorts of metrics on who played the more, not just who beat the better teams and lost to the better teams, but how dominant were they in those games. So it looks to me, if you compare that Michigan resume to Alabama's, Michigan has beaten better teams at the very top, but Alabama beat more quality teams. And obviously Alabama's got one more loss, but one of them is to the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah. And I think it's a pretty substantial margin at this point between number 1 and number 2 in the country as well. This isn't a year where 1 versus 2 is interchangeable. I think that plays a large factor into the equation.
Yeah, sure doesn't seem like it, does it? Seems like Georgia's way out ahead. Especially if Cincinnati is going to be considered by some people the number 2 team in the country, which I in no way believe that Cincinnati's the second best team in the country. But if they're going to be ranked number 2 in the country, I don't remember a time in which this early in the season there was a team that just looked like, played like, and had the results of the number 1 team, and there was not a close number 2.
Well, I think usually it was 1 and 2 this early on throughout the season, but with Alabama losing, I think that helped separate the gap more than anyone. I mean, it was huge before today, but after today, I mean, I'm trying to think of who's looked like the second best team. Oklahoma's looked really good with Caleb Williams. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Let me change subject a little bit. So,
Okay.
based on the way Oregon played,
Yes.
and they almost lost to Cal, which makes no sense to anybody. Can we just say, I understand Ohio State lost to Oregon, but Ohio State is the better team?
Oh, we can say that all we want, but if they tie, Oregon should go to the playoff.
I'm getting to the point with Oregon where I honestly believe the committee's not going to put Oregon over.
Well,
Ohio
you might
State.
be right.
I know
You
that's
might be
crazy.
right. You might be right. And if that happened, let's say Oregon wins the rest of its games by 1 point. They're all as ugly as last night's game. And they win the Pac-12 championship game against some okay team, Arizona State. They beat them 28-27. Arizona State's 9-3, 8-4. So they play nobody really that good the rest of the season, a couple decent teams, and they win every game by 1 point. They look awful. And Ohio State just blasts everybody else they play. And the final playoff spot is down between Oregon and Ohio State. And they're both 12-1 with a conference championship. I understand the argument that Ohio State should be selected for the playoff. And I would sit here and say Ohio State. I'll say it right now, even before they've done all that. I believe Ohio State's a better team than Oregon. But I don't know why Oregon got on a plane and went out and played Ohio State. I think that's the reason we do these. We have these games.
Right. Why would you play the games if they're not going to become the most relevant thing? I mean,
So
I guess they got to matter, but at some point I've seen so much data because it's not like Oregon's looked bad in one game. I mean, they've looked bad consecutively against some of the worst teams in the Power Five.
Well,
I mean, these teams are so bad they're losing.
Yeah, I think it's funny that Oregon probably hasn't looked good in any game except for the game they played against Ohio State. I think that's the only good game they've played. They barely beat Fresno State. They lost to Stanford. They barely beat Cal. Who else have they played out there?
Arizona.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, Arizona. They were close in the fourth quarter. It was a one-possession game in the fourth quarter. It was 24-19. At Oregon, too. It's like, good God. I mean, listen, I understand you, and this kind of, in my opinion, hurts the Cincinnati argument as well. If you're a playoff team and you're going to get into playoffs, all you can do is beat bad teams, is what people of Cincinnati says, and then the schedule's so weak. Well, Oregon's playing a pretty weak team, and they can't beat anybody by more than 3 points, it feels like.
Yeah.
So I don't know how people will reconcile those conflicting things.
Yeah, we may have to.
Especially if Oregon gets in. Because if Oregon gets in with their schedule, because, again, Oregon and Cincinnati, they both only got one big win, and that's all they're going to get for the rest of the season. And Cincinnati's looked better against, in my opinion, better competition than Oregon has. And that's just how weird the Pac-12 is. But, I mean, we probably won't have to talk about that because Oregon's going to lose a game at this rate. You can't keep muddling your way through and
You used my word.
beating the horrible.
You've
Yes,
added
I know
that.
I used your word.
Well done. That was correctly used as well. Muddle their way through the rest of the Pac-12. But that would be the conference that you can muddle your way through, If they were playing in a good conference, they couldn't do that. All right, to Real MVP.
Well,
I'm going to
until
move
they
on
play
to
Oregon
these other
State.
calls here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mark, sorry if I took up much of your time.
Oh, you're
I hope
good.
the other callers have
a good
been
one.
able to talk as much as I do and have a great show.
Thank you. All right. So by the looks of things, there's been 54 seconds on the clock in Knoxville forever that fans got upset about. I think it was a measurement on a fourth down play is what I'm gathering. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Andrew. Good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Andrew. What's going on?
I was going to ask if you had the Tennessee game on still, because this is getting crazy in Knoxville.
Yeah, so I can kind of piece together what happened, but you might as well tell us because you'll be able to do a much better job because I've been talking.
Hendon Hooker completed a pass in the slot to his tight end, I believe, on 4th and 24. And the refs didn't really give the receiver a very good spot when he went down. It was one of those situations where they reviewed it and the call stood as being short by about 2 feet. And if they had spotted him at the yard gain, it would have stood also. It was just one of those situations. There wasn't a very good camera angle to tell. And so the fans have just been throwing everything that they had under their seats onto the field.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I gathered because I did see that it was 3rd and forever. And then I saw the tail end of the play and the wide receiver stretching out for the first down and then a measurement. And then the next thing I see is that there's 54 seconds on the clock forever. And they're showing trash and bottles all over the sidelines and on the field.
Yeah, the game's not. I mean, Tennessee has all of its timeouts. I don't know. I doubt it's going to matter, but I don't know what, anyway, I haven't seen anything like that for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that the previous caller was talking about early in their call about Georgia and Kentucky. Because as a Georgia fan, I'm looking ahead now to the SEC championship and beyond, because I don't believe that Georgia is going to drop 2 of its last 3 SEC games, with Missouri, Tennessee, and Florida being their remaining opponents.
You don't think they're going to lose 2 of those?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. We'll take a leap with you there, and we'll go out on a limb and let you play out your fantasy. Okay.
Right. I mean, nobody can predict the future. I wasn't gonna talk about anything in the future really, other than Kentucky. I thought played pretty well today against Georgia and did some good things that I think the opponents that have the ability to match Georgia when it comes to depth and talent are going to be able to use the film for. Kentucky's offensive line played very well, and although Georgia was able to tally, I think, maybe 3 sacks in the game, it was mostly due to good pass coverage, forcing Levis to try to run, but he didn't get past the line of scrimmage, so it was counted as a sack. There wasn't what I've seen from the Georgia defense in most games past this year, where there were really effective blitz packages that took the quarterback down 5 yards or more behind the line of scrimmage. So whatever schemes the offensive line for Kentucky was using really helped shut out a lot of the pass rush from Georgia's defensive line. And that was they played that really well. And then Kentucky showed Georgia secondary plays a lot of zone and some man coverage, but when they're playing zone, they play very soft, and it's become pretty evident to me that the defensive philosophy of Georgia is that they're willing to give up pass plays of between 4 and 8 yards if it means taking away any possibility of games that are, 25 or more. And Kentucky put together 2 really good drives. I mean, the one at the end of the game, whether I think it's cool or not that Stoops called a timeout to try to score with like 7 seconds left when the game was completely out of reach, is irrelevant. That drive ended up being 12 minutes off the clock, I think, over 11 for sure. And I think this can't be right. I think it was like, 15 plays. I'm going crazy, but that drive may have been like 20 plays. I don't remember. It was a lot.
Let me see here.
And that was what they did.
22 play drive. 22.
It was 22. Okay.
22
so not crazy.
Play drive. That's great.
And there weren't a lot of penalties on that drive. They just gained 5 yards every time they were gaining yardage.
Yeah.
And, put together 5. A very, very long drive. 22
for 75. That's less than 4 yards per play. That's well less than 4. It's about 3.5 yards per play. 11:23 off the clock. I love that. That's tremendous.
It was nuts. It was nuts to watch. But it gives me pause again about Georgia's defense, because there is definitely a way to beat them. I mean, the secondary has looked good this year, but they're supported so much by Georgia's defensive front that there are a lot of erratic passes and off-balance passes being thrown by opposing quarterbacks to let the receivers get, or to let the safeties of the corners get underneath and break up passes or intercept passes. And so I thought Kentucky really, what I'm saying is, like I mentioned, that this game, while it was a great win and a big win for Georgia, a very convincing one, I'm looking at the teams down the line that will have the ability to match Georgia in every fashion when it comes to the makeup of their team. They can use this game to beat Georgia, and I think that Georgia has to look at itself and figure out some ways to make those 4 to 8 or 10 yard gains much more difficult than it was for Kentucky today on multiple drives. Because there was another drive that they put together that resulted in a blocked field goal, but they got into the red zone and on that one too. They got into the red zone 3 times today.
And even with all that so-called success, the game wasn't close.
Right. Georgia played well offensively for the most part. Their run game looked really good on their second touchdown drive, but after that, the run game really didn't do much. Stetson Bennett played really well today. I know you've said in the past that Georgia's weakness is Stetson Bennett. If they have any on the offensive side of the ball, it's that they need to get JT Daniels back up to playing speed and ready for what's going to come after the regular season. Because I think that it should be obvious. I guess it's not to a lot of people, but it should be obvious that JT Daniels gives Georgia much better chance to win a title. Not just any given game on any given Saturday, but to win a national championship than Stetson Bennett does. And the fact that Georgia's run game stalled out for the most part today, except for on one good drive, is evidence of that.
Well, I do think that Gary Danielson today made a good point about Stetson Bennett. And that is that, and you don't have to have played years and years in the NFL at quarterback like Gary Danielson to come to this conclusion, but it seems to have passed most of us by, that you don't have to be a 5-star quarterback to improve. Like taking Stetson Bennett at his level of play last year doesn't mean that he can't and has not improved from that and learned from that. I don't think there's any question he's learned from it. I don't know how much he's improved as a passer and decision maker, but well, yeah, decision maker, he has improved.
I think what would be really interesting is if JT Daniels comes back, let's say for, he's back and playing against Tennessee, let's say, or maybe even comes back, Georgia's got a bye week next week. And so maybe he'll come back and play against Florida. If that game is if Georgia wins that game, but the margin of victory is within, a touchdown or even 10 points, I wonder what the conversation will be around whether JT Daniels or Stetson Bennett really is the better choice for Georgia at quarterback. But that's all hypothetical. Because Stetson Bennett, Georgia's in the business right now of beating ranked teams soundly. And I love it as a fan. But the ranked competition that we're facing isn't going to be the same in the regular season as it would be in a postseason.
Yeah.
And so if JT Daniels comes back to start playing again and starting games in the regular season, we're not, now that Florida lost today, I don't know if we're going to have another ranked opponent on our schedule. We probably won't. So if we're not winning those games as handily or more than we have been these last 3 weeks, even though I wouldn't feel great about it, I can't say that Kirby would not decide to make Stetson Bennett QB1. I don't know.
Well, I'm almost positive in that there has never been a team win a national championship without playing a game in which they had to come from behind at some point or play a close game. Alabama of last season might be the closest, but they did play 2 close games in the regular season. In an SEC championship game, they didn't have to come from behind, but they were close games. One of them was a tie game with 5 or 6 minutes left, but you can't find any team that's won a national championship without facing some adversity. So even though it seems as though Georgia, some people would believe, will not face adversity, that's very unlikely. So they're going to need a quarterback that's going to take them down the field 75 yards, down by 4 in the fourth quarter, most likely at some point.
I believe you're right. And that's another thing that, I've seen both Daniels, although it was last year, and Stetson Bennett perform well under pressure like that. So I'm not worried that one or the other wouldn't be able to handle a situation where they have the ball and need to score in order to win. But I'll let you take more calls, Mark. Thanks for talking to me. And we'll talk again soon. Have a good night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. Before I take this next call, let's keep in mind that with all that garbage being thrown on the field, disputing the measurement with 54 seconds left in the game, Tennessee had all its timeouts. Therefore, they could call a timeout after every Ole Miss running play. So they only lost 11 seconds. Ole Miss kicked. Tennessee returned it about 50 yards. They caught the ball about the 10. They returned it out to midfield. They've completed a pass or 2. They just took a shot at the end zone from reasonable range. I'm talking about like the 22-yard line. Joe Milton came into the game. I don't know if he's in because Hendon Hooker got hurt or just because he's got a better arm, but Joe Milton, I still believe, is in the game, and they've got one more play here. So from the 21-yard line, he's going to throw it into the end zone. If he, what's he doing? Oh my word! Did he just do that? Did I witness what? Did everybody see what just happened? What was that? Well, I try not to be critical of collegiate athletes, but when the only chance you have to win the game is to throw the ball into the end zone, it's the last play of the game, and you take off running and you run the ball out of bounds. If I'm a reporter in that news conference with Josh Heupel after the game, as I have been many times way, way back in these SEC games, my first question would be, did you have a conversation with Joe Milton before that final play? Were there instructions given on what had to be done with the football because there were only 3 seconds on the clock? Oh, goodness. Oh, my word. And I enjoy that it happened because I took Ole Miss and gave the points, the whatever it was, 2.5 points. So it worked out for me in my prediction, but oh my word, that's about as bad as it gets right there. That's about as bad as it gets. Yes, he ran out of bounds with time expired. And it wasn't like he took off, crossed the line of scrimmage, and made some valiant effort to get to the goal line, which would have been foolish anyway because he wasn't going to get there. He ran toward the sideline and ended up just kind of like going out of bounds. he kind of got nudged out of bounds and I just can't get over that. These guys practice all week, every week of the year. They hardly have any time off. They're okay. They're showing the final play of the game again. Joe Milton. First of all, he almost ran into an Ole Miss guy. I don't know. Just toss the ball. Now, had they been hurrying down the field, it still would be inexcusable. Had they been hurrying down the field, snapping the ball back, don't have any timeouts, and they're running up to the line and all that, okay. There was a stoppage of play before that play. That's like last night. This is not nearly as bad. The Cal quarterback, Chase Garbers, it's 4th down, 5 seconds left, whatever. It's the last play of the game. They're losing, whatever, 24-17. They've got the ball at the Oregon 3. Okay. They call a rollout. He rolls out. There's no way he's going to run into the end zone. He's rolled out and being chased like 18 yards behind the line of scrimmage. About 18 yards from the end zone. Really, he's that far back. So he's got to throw the ball. He's got like 3 guys in the end zone. Dari Noka's making the comment. All I heard him say was this was too embarrassing for Tennessee. Anyway, the quarterback, Chase Garbers, he like just throws the ball into the ground. Like you got 3 guys in the end zone. Even if they have all 11 guys in the end zone, like throw the ball as high in the air as you can to give one of your guys as much a chance to high point the football or deflect the football as possible. Oh, I think Dari Noka was talking about the trash on the field and the incident involving. He was not talking about the dumb play at the end. Yeah, you guys are talking about something different. You're talking about the incident near the end of the game. I was just talking about there were no timeouts. No. They used all the timeouts on defense. All right, let's go to our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's Di Roberto.
Hey, what's going on?
Well, yeah, I'm with you there on the last few seconds of the Tennessee game. All that work on just stuffing the run 3 straight times to get the punt and get a great field position. And that's the last play of the game.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, I guess Michigan fans definitely don't miss this guy. Joe Milton.
Yeah.
If you're going to run out of, I mean, there was no chance to run about 3 seconds. I don't know. But I guess, anyway. So today was a major upset on the number 2 team on Iowa. Iowa goes down to Purdue, and Purdue embarrassed them so bad that their one receiver in dang it, now I forgot the game. David Bell. Yeah, David Bell literally outgained the entire Iowa offense. As I look at the box score that
Did he
game.
really?
Wow.
I know he had a great game.
Yeah.
He's a great receiver. He's been great for 3 years, but
and they still don't have an answer for him. And this is a big, well, it's not an important game, but got to win out these games.
well,
You have a probably national championship contention on the line for every game on out. I can't read a saying word. From here on out, you got championship goals, and you blow it to the same team that beat that 3-1 under Jeff Brom against Iowa. You gotta have a different mentality when you go against an opponent that has your number. You gotta have mentality to win every game on your schedule. But they don't, and they lay a massive egg to Purdue. And like I said, so bad they got embarrassed so bad that with David Bell 240 yards outgains Iowa's total offense, which would be
not technically.
195%.
Well, not technically, but
Okay.
we get the point. It's close enough.
Okay, he didn't actually outgain them. Look and then read them. No, actually, maybe he did. Because not 190. Yeah, 195 plus 76, way more than 240. It looked like every single big play, especially on these 3rd and long conversions on that Iowa game. It's always David Bell with the answer. Or every jump ball, David Bell. Every burn route on him, David Bell. If that one player beats the entire team, the number 2 team. And that's not even the most disappointing game I've ever seen today. Once again, Texas disappointed me again. What is going on with these big programs that just don't get it, don't gel together and make big impacts for their season? They had a big lead again to both the top 5 team in Oklahoma and then 12th ranked Oklahoma State team that Texas was favored to win, I believe. Up 17-3, and they laid an egg once again. The offense doesn't make any move the sticks much, and the defense just lets big plays happen to them.
All right.
What does it take to fix these types of issues that's been going on for a while now?
Well, this is a completely different regime, though. Different coach, different coaching staff. So I'm not going to put what's happened at Texas against Steve Sarkisian. He's coached what?
They already have.
He's coached 7 games.
Yeah, but like probably there's got to be some changes in the offseason or something.
Changes
they
in
keep
the
this up,
offseason. They're not going to have changes in the offseason. They just hired a whole coaching staff.
Oh, they did? Well, I haven't paid attention to that.
Oh, you're talking about Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about Texas.
Yeah. It's Steve Sarkisian. It's his first year. He hired a completely new coaching staff almost entirely. So, I'm not saying he's going to not make changes. It's possible, but I would highly doubt it. I think he's going to see how things play out, and he probably hired people he's very confident in, and I don't think one season's going to change that.
But we can't have this same product out in the field definitely by next season or by the other season, because Bijan Robinson's going to be on his last year. In case he talks as a sophomore or still like a freshman, I believe. I don't know what the year he is.
All right.
So there's not every year.
Yeah. Anything else there?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. I appreciate it. You have a good one.
You too. 2007 making a comeback?
We shall see. We shall see. We're off to that kind of start.
Take care.
All right. We had a few callers who decided to hang up. So if you'd like to call back, you see the number there at the bottom of the screen, 860-499-3332. So let's get after it here. Currently, still on the field, Air Force leads Boise State 24-17, under a minute left in the fourth quarter. Arizona State on top of Utah, third quarter, 21-14. Hawaii and Nevada are only at halftime. You want some late night football? Only at halftime. Nevada leads 20-17 over the Rainbows. Of course, Georgia won over Kentucky 30-13. At least Kentucky could somewhat block Georgia. That's the most impressive performance we've seen this season against Georgia. At least Kentucky played reasonable football, and it was 14-7 at half. But Georgia is that dominant. The surprise of the day, not necessarily a big surprise if you've been paying attention in regards to the way Iowa's been winning games. It wasn't a shock. It was only an 11-point spread, so the odds makers even knew that Iowa was vulnerable. But the biggest upset of the day, the most impactful, meaningful game of the day was, of course, Purdue going to Iowa, winning 24-7. Cincinnati rolls over UCF 56-21, so that Bearcat train to the playoff doesn't seem to have an end in sight either. We've got Oklahoma over TCU 52-31. Good win for the Sooners. And Caleb Williams was a monster in this game. Alabama answered a lot of questions. They whipped Mississippi State 49-9. Will Rogers hurt his throwing shoulder early in this game, and it seemed to affect him quite a bit, though, for Mississippi State. Not that that was going to make up a 49-9 game, but there's no question that Will Rogers was banged up and really hurting during this game. Will Anderson was a monster. He had 4 sacks last I saw. Michigan State slips by Indiana 20-15. So Sparty gets by. Kenneth Walker held to 84 yards on 31 carries, or 23 carries in this game. Big game in the Big 12. Oklahoma State takes that step, that massive step toward getting to the Big 12 championship game. They beat Texas 32-24. I believe Oklahoma State has Iowa State coming up in the next 2 weeks. We just saw Ole Miss over Tennessee 31-26. Auburn over Arkansas. The Hogs have now lost 3 games, 38-23. Nice win for Auburn to get back into the rankings most likely. Baylor defeats BYU 38-24. Entertaining game there. maybe the game of the day in regards to just excitement back and forth from the beginning of the game. LSU upsets Florida 49-42. So all that siege coming down on Ed Ogeron throughout the week. They lost 3 defensive backs before this game, 2 of the best in the business, in Eli Ricks and Derek Stingley. Also, their best wide receiver and one of the best in the nation, Tayshaun Butte. And LSU still just tears apart the Florida defense. We will go through the rest of the scores, but first, let's get the phone lines open back up. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Good evening, Mark. This is Jeff calling.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Mark. Thank you for all you do. I just really enjoy your show when I catch it, but with my work schedule, sometimes I don't catch a lot of them.
Well,
I wanted to ask you about, I know I'm a little off subject this week, maybe, Mark, but what's your feeling about, like, the Buckeyes with the bye week? Don't you kind of wish, with the momentum they had, that they would have just kept rolling, or do you think it was good for them to have this bye, to have a chance to heal some players up? And I just wanted your opinion on that.
I don't think it was a situation in which they needed the bye. They, of course, had their 2 best offensive games the 2 previous weeks and their 2 best defensive games the 2 previous weeks. So I don't have a strong feeling about the bye week helping or hurting. I think from a health standpoint, it always helps. And if the C.J. Stroud injury of sorts to his shoulder was legitimate and somewhat concerning, then it, of course, gives him more time to get back to 100%. But I didn't know of any other somewhat serious injuries that really needed any type of work. It gives the defense another week of work, and now they've got Indiana coming up, and the Hoosiers played a nice game against Michigan State, at least on defense. So I think that they'll have more resistance this week playing Indiana than the last 2 weeks against Maryland and Rutgers. Defensively, Indiana's pretty solid.
And I'm so glad I got in tonight, Mark. I've been trying for weeks to get in on this, because I remember when we lost to Oregon, and there were a lot of fans upset about for some reason, C.J. Stroud. I know he had some of those overthrows in that game. But I wanted to ask you, Mark, because I think we're close to the same age. You just look a lot younger. But anyways, do you remember in '82, Mark, when Mike Tomczak had taken over, and we fans were kind of spoiled with Arch Leister?
I do.
I think I remember it was a really rainy Saturday in Columbus against Wisconsin, and Tomczak had not played well before that game, and Earl Bruce benched him for
6-0.
I don't recall.
Was the final
6-0 we lost. And if I remember right, I think Earl Bruce, that was his biggest mistake that he made, was benching Tomczak. So, but I really see C.J. Stroud. I mean, if he stays healthy and keeps going the way he's going, I really think he's going to be something special.
Yeah, I think that certainly we expect too much out of these guys, and he needed time to develop, and he's developed into a really good player. I'm not going to say anything great about him at this point. He's getting better, and obviously gets to work with the best wide receiver core in the nation and a top offensive line.
Well, that's a great point, Mark, because Mike Tomczak was working. I think he still had Gary Williams, but I think Doug Donnelly had already gone off to the NFL with the Cowboys. And maybe it was Cedric Anderson was the other receiver back then, but we're talking about some elite receivers now. Mark, who do you think is the most important guy going down the stretch here as far as the offense? Is it going to be Stroud or Henderson?
Who's going to be Who's going to be the
most important? Yeah, I apologize. The most important offensive player coming down the stretch now for us. Do you think it'll be Stroud?
No, I don't think there's any question. It's Stroud. The quarterback's the most important player on the team. He's the most important position player, most important player, period. So it's not even And they have plenty of running backs behind Henderson who are capable. Not as good as him, but capable. Not as explosive as he is, but capable.
I would like to see Henderson start getting some more touches down the stretch, because I really think, like you were saying with our offensive line, Mark, I mean, that's something special too. But I can't forget about those receivers and Stroud, and sometimes we forget about the tight end with Ruckert and Stover and even G. Scott. So it's a special team this year. I guess when I was asking you about the bye to get some guys healed up, I was talking about Cam Brown, because I thought he was playing really good at cornerback when he doesn't get mixed up. And also, I'm not really sure what's going on with Harry Miller. However, Matt Jones seems like he is a really good player when they insert him at the left guard.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising that even without any injuries, that they're doing as much shuffling as they have the last few weeks. I would think by now that they would have that sorted out, but
and a hats off to Luke Whippler too. I mean, he's been a pleasant surprise, Mark, I think.
Yeah, he's a good player.
He really is. Anyways, Mark, I let you get to some other callers, and I wanted to just say thank you really for what you do, Mark, because like we were talking the Schleister years, I remember my dad at the time had remarried, and we would go down on the weekends. And back then, you'd catch the Buckeyes on tape delay in '79. It was really a special year. And that's why I say it reminded me with Stroud, we were kind of spoiled, I think, with Justin Fields and even with Haskins. And I remember being spoiled with Schleister, and then Tomzak come in and people wanting him benched. And we ended up with that 6-0 loss to Wisconsin on that rainy Saturday. But thank you for all you do, Mark, and I hope you have a wonderful night.
Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate that. You have a great night.
Good night. You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the 82 Buckeyes lost 3 consecutive games after starting 2-0, and it looked to be a dismal year in Columbus, but they won 7 straight. And it's a bit of a controversy, at least I think so, because they played an inordinate amount of Big Ten games for a couple years. It made no sense. Some teams played 9 games. Some teams played 8 games. Ohio State beat Michigan in 82 to finish 7-1 in the Big Ten and drop Michigan to 8-1. So they beat Michigan head to head. They only had 1 loss, as did Michigan, but Michigan was 8-1. Ohio State 7-1. Made no sense. Therefore, Michigan won the Rose Bowl, or won the Big Ten, and went to the Rose Bowl that particular season. Lost to UCLA 24-14. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is Damian from Oklahoma. Am I talking to the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers?
You bet you are. How's it going there, Damian?
Oh, man. It's pretty nice. I'm super excited about the season. You know, we just had Caleb come in, and he's playing great. I'm wondering, do you think this might be the year we have a chance? I know Georgia is looking really tough, and their defense is really good. They'd probably be the one team I'm worried we can't beat, but I think anybody else we could play up and down with, and Georgia I think we could play with too.
You know, sometimes it's maybe better to have a situation like Oklahoma's experiencing this year where, okay, they haven't lost a game. So despite all these problems and all these complaints from Oklahoma fans, and I get it, they haven't played well and they played down to their opposition generally. So I understand the complaints and the concerns. You get the people that just complain. Then you get people that are just concerned, and rightfully so. There was a lot to be concerned about on this team, but sometimes it's better when you're able to, as for a team that has championship aspirations, not play your best early in the season, not hit your stride, but still, if you're good enough to be able to win games in your conference without being at your best and have all that time to progress and get better and develop, and you hit your peak later in the season, we can point to a lot of championship teams that followed that recipe.
We're hitting our peak right now. But I mean, our offense still has a ways to go. Defense still has a long ways to go. And I was just kind of wondering, do you think Caleb has any kind of chance to win the Heisman this year? One of my friends was saying I was crazy. I probably am.
Could he win the Heisman?
But he's been playing really good.
Well, he's obviously a longer shot since he hasn't played the games. But so this is going to be his, let's say he came into the 6th game, right? So that would have been the 6th game last week. So he missed roughly, and I know that he played a little bit, but he missed roughly 5 to 5.5 games. I don't think that there's not a clear Heisman runner, front runner right now. I think that he could win the Heisman. It's not likely, again, but if people take into consideration the situation and not just look at statistics, because he's not going to have the opportunity to compile the statistics required that are going to wow people. But if they just look at, okay, here was a team that has all this talent that was struggling, and he made this enormous difference. And now, at the time, of course, that the Heisman's voted on, we just have the regular season played in the conference championship. And if people come to that conclusion, sure, he could win a Heisman. I don't expect it,
Well,
but he could.
I think that's exactly what I was trying to tell my friend.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all about stats and everything. So you never know what's going to happen.
It shouldn't be.
But I just want to give you my top 4 real quick. I think we got Georgia number 1, Cincinnati number 2, Oklahoma number 3, and I guess a bit. I think State Buckeyes.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we've lost you. You're breaking up. You back?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, you might lose me again. I'm sorry if you do. I can hang up real quick. But I had Georgia 1, Cincinnati 2, OU 3, Alabama 4, Ohio State right outside of there. What do you think about that?
Okay. Sounds reasonable. Thanks for the call.
All right.
All right. We appreciate that call, but we've lost him. So we'll keep moving on here at the Voice of College Football. Who's next on the line?
Hello, Mark Rogers. It is Jim from Georgia.
Hey, Jim.
How are you?
Georgia. Big Georgia Tech fan, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
All right. So, Ole Miss plays LSU next week.
Okay.
Auburn has a bye. It should be a really, really big matchup in a couple weeks. Auburn versus Ole Miss on October 30th. It's Jordan Hare, or Auburn fans say Jordan Hare.
Yeah, it's Jordan Hare, right? That's how I always say it.
Yeah, Jordan Hare. Who do you think wins?
Well, after what I saw out of Ole Miss tonight, and I watched the entire game against Arkansas last week. Now, I saw quite a bit of the Auburn game against Arkansas, but not the entire game by any stretch. Oh, I think it's a great matchup. I don't have a strong conviction that either team's better than the other one. Of course, Auburn's going to have a slight advantage playing at home. I think they're playing better complementary football. I think that this Ole Miss defense has improved, but it was just beyond awful last year. So they've improved up to just maybe awful. So I think that Auburn's got a defensive advantage. So if Bo Nix, the other thing I like about Bo Nix, watching him the last several weeks, is he has seemed to calm down a little bit. He was always playing very nervous football. Like everything had to be 100 miles an hour. Every throw had to be 100 miles an hour. Looked like he was running a 2-minute drill all the time. And it seems like he's kind of settled in, relaxed, calmed down. And yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's a
he put a
toss-up
lot
of a
of touch
game.
on. He had a lot more touch this week compared to last week against Georgia. He was just chunking fastballs like the whole day, and they were blaming the receivers, which, yeah, you could probably catch a lot of those, but I mean, he was throwing the ball with way too much velocity. He had a lot more touch this weekend. Personally, I think Auburn might win, but I think that's going to be a really good game. That's like a really underrated potential, not potential, but future matchup. I was wondering who do you think in this hypothetical matchup, who do you think will win this? 2019 LSU or 2020 Alabama?
That's a great one. I am sure that that has been bantied about, and there are all sorts of sites online that have looked into that.
Yeah, because those are arguably the two best teams of the past decade, right? I mean,
sure.
I've got to be, yeah. I don't know any other national championship team in the past decade that would beat either one of those teams.
Well, we don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if any national championship team beat any other national championship team. You know, if you said 2015 Alabama's playing 2019 LSU, or 2014 Ohio State's playing 2013 Florida State, like, I don't know who would win these games. Yeah. Anyone who says that they do is a bit foolish. But you know, I tend to lean LSU in that comparison. I think that their defense was playing really well the final 4 to 5 games of the season, whereas Alabama played well in the playoffs, certainly not in the conference championship game.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think 2019 LSU is the better team. Of course, I think it comes down to the defense. I think just, you know, LSU just had not even just a little bit of a better defense. I think their defense was significantly better in multiple key areas, like at linebacker. And when you mentioned about you think you wouldn't be surprised if any national championship team would be any other about that. I think that 2013 Florida State is kind of an outlier. That I think that team is probably one of the worst national championship teams of the past, like, probably ever. I think they had one of the easiest schedules, regular season schedules, and then they beat Duke in the conference championship game. Then they played a mediocre Auburn team that should have been 8-4 in the national championship. And they barely beat them. So I think 2013 Florida State was not. I wouldn't say that they were all that great, personally.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
I think the best team that year. I think the best team that year was Alabama, by far.
By far.
Yeah.
By far. Then why didn't they win the games? Why'd they lose 2 games? I don't know that they were the best team by far. I think maybe from a talent standpoint, I can agree with you, just like I could say the 2015 Ohio State Buckeyes were the best team in terms of talent, but they just didn't win the right game. So I get your point. I get your point. I don't know that they were the best team by far, or they would have beaten a team that you just cited, a team like Auburn that should have been 8-4, as you just stated. I wouldn't drag them down to an 8-4 record, but regardless, Alabama should have won that game. They shouldn't have lost by 2 touchdowns in the Sugar Bowl if they were that good. But
Yeah.
I get your point. They were loaded with talent. They probably had the most talented team, and when they pulled it together. But I do agree with the assessment of Florida State. I would have liked to have seen Florida State. That's the game I would have liked to have seen, is Florida State play Alabama.
Yeah. Because I mean, personally, I think Alabama might have actually won that matchup.
Yeah, I would have picked them to win.
Yeah. All right. So we'll talk about this year, and then I'll get off the phone. I'm sure there's a lot of callers, waiting to talk to the voice of college football. Okay. So I wonder exactly how teams have fared playing against Alabama after a loss. I need a stat for that. Playing against Alabama after the game after Alabama loses.
I gotcha. I think of a lot of those.
Hate to be that thing.
I think of a lot of those situations when I think, okay, I would love to have a stat for this or a stat for that. Can somebody work on that? Because I certainly don't want to go through all of it. They did show tonight that Nick Saban was 15-1, so that would be 15-2. That would now be 16-2 after a loss. And they get
because of Auburn, and then they lost to Oklahoma in 2008 when they lost to Florida, and then Utah. Is that what you're talking about? They've never lost 2 back-to-back regular season games, though, right?
Well, hang on just a second. So those are the 2 games that I thought of as well. So they must not have, when they lost 3 games in 2010, those must not have been consecutive games.
Yeah, they lost to, I think it was South Carolina, then 3 weeks later against LSU, and then 3 weeks later against Auburn.
Yeah. So those were the 2 you just cited. Lost to Utah after they lost the SEC championship game to Florida, and yes, the Sugar Bowl after the Auburn game in 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you can argue that. I know this. I mean, I guess this sounds kind of like nonsense, but I wouldn't really necessarily say that the Alabama fans are just. I mean, not the Alabama fans, but the Alabama players. No matter how disciplined or how much your coach is so, it just seems like your team would be ready to go against teams like even in a bowl game, but it's kind of hard when you're Alabama to kind of get up and go in just in a Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, I understand your point. Every team has different emotions and motivations for games, but I consider that an excuse. You got a game to play. You're playing on national TV in the Sugar Bowl. You should be up for the game and ready to play. And if you lose, then you suffer the consequences of being considered not as good as the other team. So that's we can cite a million examples like that. So anyway,
there have definitely been some really blatant cases of there's this team that's taking an opportunity that's not that big of a program that beats a team of a higher caliber because that team had much higher expectations. You look at Auburn in the Sugar Bowl in 2017 against UCF. I think if they had still they were wanting to go to the playoffs.
Let's stay on 2021. Yeah. We can argue those incidents in the off season, but thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And you have a good one.
Absolutely. You too. All right, let's keep moving along. We've got all sorts of time between the end of the national championship game and the first game of the season to talk about such things. All right, welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
How's it going, sir? This is Steve.
Hey, Steve. What's going on?
How's it going, sir?
I'm good.
Yeah,
How
I've got
are
a question for you. Good, sir. Yeah, I want to have you get your take on something. I know with the college football playoff ranking shows, the first one should be coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm assuming. And I want to get your take on Cincinnati. Do you think the committee will give them a shot and put them in the top 4 right off the bat, considering other one-loss teams in the Power 5 that are still legitimate contenders, like the Oklahomas and Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Georgia and Alabama? What do you take on that? I know the resume is pretty much contingent on how Notre Dame does. I know there's signature wins against Indiana and Notre Dame. I guess as long as Notre Dame wins out, they'll have a shot. But the only ranked team they play, Cincinnati has the rest of the schedule is SMU, which is not really it's a Group of 5 team, so it's not really a Power 5 as far as credibility is concerned. But what is your belief on that with Cincinnati?
So unfortunately, your call's getting a little muffled, but I think I got your point. So basically, so if you line up the teams right now, there are only how many undefeated teams? We got Michigan, Michigan State, we've got Wake Forest, we've got Georgia. I think that's it. Oklahoma. We got 5 undefeated teams in the Power 5. Then we've got Cincinnati. So I got to think that, and Wake Forest really hasn't played anyone. Michigan State's, going to hit some resistance here very soon. So this could be a situation where Cincinnati gets a top 4 ranking. People aren't going to necessarily like this or understand it, because I know this from doing my own rankings that people don't get this. Cincinnati could be a top 4 team in the first college football rankings, the playoff rankings, and they could continue to win and they could drop because their resume is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. And everybody else's resumes are going to do nothing but get better, 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 better. So, and of course, some of those teams are going to play each other. So they're going to knock each other off, or at least hand a loss, like Michigan, Michigan State are going to play, of course. But they're also, if one of them can stay strong or only lose one game, then there's going to be all sorts of teams that are going to have stronger resumes with 0 or probably 1 loss than Cincinnati that are going to be ranked ahead of them. You'd have to line up all the games and all the results for me to tell you where I think they're going to be ranked. But when's that come out? It's got to be coming out like maybe next Tuesday.
A couple of weeks from now, early November.
Soon. It's probably next Tuesday is my guess. Not this one coming up. Probably the next one. Let's see here. First college football playoff rankings 2021. They're going to come out on, does it say? It's November 2nd. Is that correct? So they're not coming out till November 2nd. So we still have 2 games. Week of the 23rd, week of the 30th, and they'll come out on Tuesday. So we got 2 more games to play.
Yeah, I would agree with your assessment. I think the committee might put them in the top 4 maybe in the first couple of weeks of the rankings, and then they drop out due to the resume, the weakening of their resume, and everyone else kind of rises up them. So I would definitely agree with that. And I think they might appease them as well, like, oh yeah, well you were ranked in the top 4, but now your resume, you dropped out. So I don't know. I think once they go to the Big 12, I think they may have a better opportunity at that point. But the other thing I wanted to say was I know you mentioned some Ohio State quarterbacks. You mentioned Schleister and Tomzak. I grew up in Ohio from the early to mid '80s. But my favorite Ohio State quarterback was always Jim Carsados. I thought he had a great throwing arm and great delivery.
Oh yeah, Jim Carsados, Chris Carter, Mike Lanise, the rest of those guys. Yeah, starter for what, 85 and 86.
Yeah, he was drafted late in the I think in the later rounds by the Dolphins. But I don't think he stuck. But yeah, I always liked his throwing arm and his delivery. I thought he had great touch in the football. But what do I know? But anyway, so hey, thanks for your time. I know you have other people, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
Next up here at the Voice of College Football is we did get a question in here about the Iowa quarterback situation, and I would agree. Of course, they would it would serve them better to have a better quarterback, especially a more dynamic quarterback who can threaten the defense. If you don't have a quarterback that can threaten the defense with his legs, then you better have just the next Tom Brady. He better be a surgeon back there, and they have neither. So yes, this is pretty inevitable of Iowa football, what we're watching right now. They've got a good team. The defense is rock solid. The offensive line's really good, although this offensive line for Iowa is not even one of their better ones. We know what they've produced at tight end. Where are they lacking? Quarterback. Their best quarterbacks are Ricky Stanzi, CJ Beathard, Jake Rudock, guys that will get drafted in the NFL and play a little bit and be good quarterbacks, good college quarterbacks. But they're not going to scare you with anybody on the outside. They're not going to have a running threat at quarterback. They're not going to have dynamic playmakers. It's just the way it is. They just don't recruit and sign those guys. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Chris from East Texas.
Hey, Chris. What's going on, man?
My heart aches as a Longhorn fan.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm on the highest prescribed blood pressure medicine of all time after these last 2 weeks. First off, I got to eat my crow and apologize to Zach Calzada. I don't know if you remember, but I gave him a hard time after that loss to Mississippi State a couple of weeks ago. Dude proved me wrong against Alabama last week. He didn't look bad today either. So,
yep,
maybe Jimbo has something working for him. I know I'm not the only person that's thinking this, but if you were on the voting committee for the playoff and you were voting for the rankings, would you currently right now have Ohio State or Oregon? Which one would you have higher right now?
Which one would I have higher? Oregon.
Yes. Okay. See, that makes sense. So
I wouldn't even have to think about it.
Because I'm the same way. But I have a feeling that Ohio State is going to get the higher ranking if both of them continue to win, just because they're going to say, well, Ohio State's look better. We have to value the head-to-head. The head-to-head has to matter.
Yep. I completely agree.
And if you look at the AP poll, a lot of AP voters have Ohio State over Oregon, and that makes absolutely no sense to me. Going back to, like I said, I'm a Texas fan. Going back to 2008, when Texas beat Oklahoma, we went through that ordeal with the three-way tie with damn you, Michael Crabtree, but that Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Texas ordeal, like the head-to-head has to matter. And I think that kind of gets lost with the who looks better at the end of the year type of deal. But I think you keep Oregon above Ohio State as long as Oregon has the same amount of losses as Ohio State.
Absolutely, you do. And there's all sorts of people that are commenting in the chat that, no, Oregon lost to this team and they struggled here. And did they not play Ohio State? They played Ohio State. Why'd they get on an airplane and travel all the way across the country and play a football game?
They beat them in Columbus.
And they didn't have 5 of their starting defensive players, including arguably the best defensive player in the country, didn't play. We can cover sports like this. If this is the way we want to do it, we can play the Super Bowl and then at the end of the game say, we really don't think you're the best team. We think that these guys over here were the best team. They just didn't play the best tonight. So we're still going to give them the Super Bowl trophy. We know you won, but we like them better. We think they're better. So we're going to give them the trophy. Is that the way we're going to do things?
No, you have to value the head-to-head. You have to value the head-to-head. I mean, that's why they play the game, right?
Absolutely. And I'm seeing comments in the chat. Oregon's going to, if they get in the playoffs, they're going to get embarrassed. I can't control that. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't.
Oklahoma gets embarrassed every year.
Yeah, all sorts of teams get embarrassed
every year that they get into the playoffs.
Yes,
I mean, but
the majority of the games have been an embarrassment. So,
yeah.
Just to give you an example, in 2018, people asked me the weekend of the conference championship games after they were played and the selection was made, who were the 4 best teams in the country. Well, I included, along with the 3 undefeated teams, LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. I said, well, if you're just asking me my opinion, I think Alabama is the 4th best team in the country. So if we were just going to say, Mark, you get to select the playoffs and select the 4 best teams. Well, I'm selecting Alabama, but they didn't earn it. They didn't win their division. They lost 2 games. Oklahoma earned it because they won a conference and they only lost 1 game. So they should be going, but I don't think they're as good as Alabama. But what I think shouldn't matter, what we think shouldn't matter, and especially in the case of what's going on right now that you're bringing up, the 2 teams played. They played 2015. Michigan State won a series of fluke type games, but they won them. They won them, and they beat Ohio State.
Don't matter how you won it.
They beat Ohio State head to head. Now, does anybody who follows football, watches football, know that Ohio State, they basically had an NFL team? They were better than Michigan State, but they didn't beat them. They didn't beat them. Michigan State beat Ohio State. Yeah. They went to the playoff, and Alabama crushed them. But you know what? Win the game.
Yeah. You play to win the game.
Yeah, if we all want to vote on what teams get into the playoff, there could be some team that lost the first 4 games of the season, then got things together, and they're sitting there at 8-4. Okay, are they one of the best teams? Oh, they've won 8 in a row. Let's forget their record. They're 8-4. We'll just put them in.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's been a head scratcher for me. Ever since Oregon lost to Stanford, I was like, well, you still have to keep them above Ohio State. Well, I think the popularity of Ohio State has them above Oregon in the AP poll, which, I mean, it doesn't matter, really. It's just for TV ratings, if you ask me. But
well,
you have any?
I think what you're saying is probably part of it, but I do think that people that know football to a certain extent, depending on the person, have an opinion that Ohio State's better, and they may be better. So I think that some of it's not just about popularity or that more people are going to watch Ohio State play or anything like that. Some of it's just legitimate thought that Ohio State, even though they lost that game, is a better football team. So I think it's done honestly, that people are just saying, well, they're still better, so we're just going to place them. But that doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't even be argued.
Yeah.
Like that's why we play sports.
Yeah, like I
to figure out.
I see some of these people in the I see some of these people in the comments over here saying, you know, Stanford should be ranked ahead of Oregon if that's what we're going based off of.
No,
right? Get out
they
of
don't
here
have
with
the
that.
same record. Yes,
no,
if Stanford had
mean,
the same record, if Stanford had the same record as Oregon, yes, they should be ranked ahead of Oregon because they beat them. If they had the same record,
they're saying Purdue should be ranked above Iowa after today. Also,
well,
come on now. I mean,
nobody could be ranked anywhere because as soon as every team that's lost a game, it would be impossible to have rankings. You couldn't have rankings if that was your basis because everybody lost to somebody. 2 years ago, Georgia went 10-2 and South Carolina went 4-8, but South Carolina beat Georgia. So they obviously should be ranked and ranked ahead of Georgia. That's a idiotic statement to make, but people are just doing that.
I mean,
so
any given Saturday, anybody. I mean, Appalachian State against Michigan. However many years ago that was. I mean, 15 years ago.
If
whatever.
I'm understanding your point, it's the same point that I'm making. Oregon should be ranked ahead of Ohio State as long as they have the same record. Once Oregon loses another game, that's out the door. As far as I'm concerned, it's out the door. They lost a second game. They now have 2 losses. Okay, that no longer applies. Although under different,
I'm 100% with you on that.
Under different circumstances, I could certainly compare 2 teams, and let's say one was 7-2 and one was 8-1, and the 7-2 team beat the 8-1 team, and I could still argue that I would rank them ahead of them, but that would be in a situation in which they played a really difficult schedule, blah, blah, blah. And we know Oregon has not done that, and they've not played a difficult schedule, nor have they played well. So in my thinking and in my rankings, as soon as they lose another game, they will drop considerably. But that hasn't happened.
Right. I'm 100% with you on that. We must value the head-to-head. It has to be valued. And everybody in the comments saying, no, Ohio State. Who has Ohio State played, though? I mean, you can go with that argument also.
Ohio State hasn't even played anybody that good. It's funny because
it's easy to look dominant over Akron.
I would still make the same argument that we are making right now. Even if Ohio State, even if the rest of their games they had beaten Clemson, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan, Oklahoma, even if they played a murderer's row and beat them all, I would still say, well, you're going to rank Oregon. They got the same record above Ohio State because they played head to head and they beat them.
Absolutely.
But it's funny, but at least I would honor that argument a little much more. I would understand it. I would say, okay, I get it. Ohio State's beating all these amazing teams. I still don't agree, but I get your point. But Ohio State hasn't been. I think Oregon's beaten better teams than Ohio State has. So the best team Ohio State's beaten is Minnesota.
Yeah, look at them.
And they're 4-2. They're okay. They're one of the 40 or 50 best teams in the country.
They're still rowing the boat, I guess. It's staying afloat a little bit.
They're all right.
I do want to ask you, though, and are we seeing the best defense of our lifetime with Georgia right now?
A lot of people have asked me that. There is dominance.
And do we think they
can
continue this? Do you think they will consistently continue this dominance throughout
the regular season?
SEC championship? Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. Who do they have left?
That's a hard. Well,
Florida.
I mean, and look at Florida
Missouri.
Yeah.
Who else did they play? So they're 7-0, right? So they got 5 games left.
They're 7-0.
One of them's Georgia Tech. And
Tennessee.
I don't know. So they still have Tennessee, Mizzou, Florida's 4. Who are we missing? They must
They got to
still
play
have
a
like an
West team.
FCS game.
No, they
don't
already
they?
played a West team.
I think they probably
Yeah,
still.
probably. Yeah.
So forget that
Yeah,
one.
they probably play like Georgia A&M
Yeah,
junior
so
varsity
they
or
got
something.
4 real games left. Florida,
And
Mizzou,
most likely Alabama in the SEC
Tennessee.
championship game.
Yeah, well, that's when that all ends. They're not holding Alabama to 4 points. So
no, obviously not. But I mean, are we seriously thinking like this Georgia defense could seriously hold Alabama under 20 and below?
No,
I think it's a good possibility. I
don't think so. They're not going to hold. I don't think they're holding Alabama to less than 20 points.
I think
30.
A&M
Okay, I'll have that
had
argument.
had a good chance of doing it, but they had a lot of offensive flaws in the second half that gave Alabama a lot of offensive possessions, and I think even A&M's defense could have held Alabama to 24 or below. If A&M's offense could have kept playing like they did in the first half. Obviously, your defense gets tired the more they're on the field, and I think that's what happened to A&M's defense in the second half. But I don't know. I haven't seen a defense this fast, this aggressive. I don't think ever since I've been watching college football, and that's 24, 25 years now. I mean, there's something else. I think Kirby has something cooking there, and I think this might be their year.
All right, man.
That's if JT Daniels stays healthy.
Yep.
Stetson Bennett, I don't think he can lead them to a championship. But with JT Daniels, I think that might be a different story.
All right, man. Well, thanks for the call.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's DeAndre, man.
Hey, DeAndre. What's going on?
Man, you think Pickett might get his revenge against Clemson next weekend?
Who's playing Clemson?
Pickens.
Oh,
remember,
okay.
He had that game where he was
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah,
for 8 yards in that game.
Kenny Pickett.
8 yards.
Yeah.
I think he'll do better than that. He had 19 touchdowns and 1 pick coming into today's game.
Well, I was listening to Dabo talk, and I haven't had the chance to talk to Jason. Jason said we missed not Jason, but Dabo said we're missing 14 players on our scholarship players that didn't play against Syracuse. But that offensive line is just really, really awful. I thought that DJ played a little bit better. Booth didn't play corner. Sheridan Jones, or I can't remember who was at the boundary side, but he played. But I'm kind of interested to watch this game because of the weather, but how good Georgia defense is really good, but people keep forgetting how good Clemson defense has played the whole year. And it's not like they played an offensive juggernaut, but this is going to be a good test for them to see how good that defense really is. But they still missing 2 of their key players with Davis and Breezy being out. So I'm kind of interested to see what Clemson's going to do against Pitt's offense. And also another interesting game, Miami has lost a whole lot of heartbreaking games, and they get NC State down in Miami next week. And I have to pull for Miami because I need for them to lose. I need for NC State to lose for Clemson. Could possibly have a shot at the ACC championship game because Clemson got Wake Forest still, and they got a hard game against Pitt. So they can find a way to beat Pitt. They might be all right the rest of the season because that defense is playing lights out. They're saving them. I just never seen an offense that bad, man. Not offensive line that bad. And I just don't know why Dabo's so so stubborn that he won't change his defense around. His offense around, and get some help on that side or play some different players. But I'm not at practice every day, so they might be the best players they got at receiver right now. And they seem like they stay hurt. Justin Ross, Nagata, and all of them. Nagata, Justin Ross that pass over the over the middle. He dropped the pass, and then he said, "Oh, I'm hurt." And I know the guy came back from a major injury to play football this year, but I mean, it just seems like he always gets hurt and drops the ball too. Since he had his bad that injury, but you can't blame him for coming back for something like that.
How'd you do on your picks today?
But terrible. What game got me? Boston College, NC State. I listened to a lot of people calling that for upset, but I should have known better.
Yeah, you should have listened to me. I just, I was while I was listening to you, I was adding up my totals. So I went 11-6 against the spread today.
Who else got me? I didn't bet on it, but I wish I took the first half. It was 42.5. Ole Miss, Tennessee. I should have known that wouldn't go 42.5. That's a lot of points. But the way they both of their offense and defenses play, I thought they would have. I think they ended up with 34. But I hit on the Oklahoma and Texas game, and I hit on the over on Oklahoma and TCU. I think that was 33 in the first half. And I don't know what the final score ended up being, but when you look at those games like that, it's kind of crazy how it ended between those two. There's another game that I missed on. There's some things I wish I would have followed my intuition on, but I'll give you an example. I couldn't figure out why Arkansas was a 10.5 point favorite over Auburn. I like, well, maybe I missed something on that game.
How much?
It was 10.5.
10.5.
It was 10.5.
5.
You have 5?
5.
I thought 10.5. I wanted. It was 5,
10.5.
not 10.5.
10.5.
I thought I could have swore.
Auburn and Arkansas.
I thought I could have swore. That's what I thought I saw.
5.
I got to go back and look at it, but that's what I thought I saw.
Okay.
And I could be wrong. And then there was another game I missed off poorly. Florida and LSU. I wish I would have picked. I went ahead to pick LSU for that game. Like I started to, but I was like, no, I don't think they're gonna go down to Death Valley and beat them guys. I'm looking for that thing. You're right. It was 4.5, but I still should have took it because I couldn't understand what was the biggest difference between those two teams. But I really haven't seen Auburn play that much this year. And everybody keeps sleeping on Auburn because they got a new head coach. But, I mean, that might be an upset of the year right there when they get Alabama at the end of the year.
Could be.
Could be. Hey, Rob, I just heard you talk about best defenses of all time. What was the team that Deshaun Watson played against Alabama? The Alabama team, like they scored every game that year.
Yeah.
They had 20. And then you also got to go back to Clemson. And just to show you how good that Clemson defense was, think about this. They shut down Alabama with 16 points. And at that time, people said this was the best offense they ever seen Alabama had.
Mm-hmm.
And that included Judy, Smith, Waddle, and who am I missing? The guy out of Oakland. I think I missed him. Those four good receivers.
Suggs.
Yeah, Derek Judy, Suggs. Okay, yeah, those four. Then you had Jacobs, who was a first-round pick. You had Leonard Wood at left guard. Then, you know, I can't remember the tight end, but I thought he went pretty high too. I know it wasn't Howard. It was a tight end after Howard, but I think he went high in the first round. Then you had both of the Harrises, Najee. I don't know what the other Harris is doing, but you had all that talent on that team. And Clemson shuttled down. N2 was the first round pick. So, I mean, I give a lot of credit to what Georgia's doing. That defensive tackle that plays over the center, he's a monster. And I think he makes a big difference. But we should be careful of saying that, like, this is the best team. You got to also look at who they play. And people say, well, who did Clemson play that year? I said, but look what they did against Alabama, who had, like, a ridiculous amount of talent on their offense that particular year. And everybody was calling that Alabama team the best Alabama team or best team of all time. I mean, you got to go back now. And you got to go back to Florida State. Jameis Winston's 2012 year. Was that the one they won the national championship? Whichever year they won the national championship, they had Joyner. They had James that played for San Diego. And then they had that other corner. He played for the Rams. They had those three on the team at the same time. And then they had, I'm sure they probably have some good defensive linemen that I'm skipping. I mean, there's a whole lot of defense. I know he said that's the best defense of all time that he's seen, but think about what that Florida State team on defense did to Clemson, who had Andre Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins on that team. And I think Bryant, who got kicked out of the league for weed, playing for Pittsburgh, was on that team also. Think about how good that defense really was. And they beat Clemson, 52-14. And Todd Boyd at that time probably was Clemson's best quarterback to ever come through there. And I think Clemson also had Dwayne Allen and Ellington, who played with the Cardinals for a long time. So, I mean, that was a very good defense, too. They shut people down. I know everybody said they had a weak schedule, but the only reason why Florida State had a weak schedule that year was because Oklahoma State decided to drop the game and they had to add somebody. But just look at what they did to Clemson. That defense was amazing. And I'm sure we leave it out some defenses that, I mean, Alabama in 91, the one that beat Miami, Trajan Langdon, and those two defensive tackles, Ed Curry and Wilson. I mean, there's a lot of defenses that's just as good as this one. They just the flavor of the month right now. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, yeah, this is the best defense of all time. But I said, we just saw some great defenses not in the last, 10 years. And a day of the spread.
For sure.
Oh, man, Florida State. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, man.
Yeah.
Anything else?
All right, Mark. No, I know you tired, man. I called in earlier, but you talked to your other boy about the Ohio State, Oregon. I don't even know what the argument is. That Oregon beat them that day. They had a bad day. These teams, you got all these super seniors and all this other stuff going on, and guys has been waiting to get on the field, and they playing against 18 and 19-year-old guys who might be 5-star or get used to the college game. I mean, next year, I guarantee you, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama will be back, and they probably won't be challenged next year. I mean, and Georgia's going to stay where they're at. I mean, this year is just a special year, and we should just sit back and relax and enjoy it because we got a chance to watch some of the greatest teams, some of the greatest games on TV. I mean, I missed that Purdue-Iowa game. I mean, the coach even said, hey, man, we get a lot of our points off of turnovers. What happens if the guy didn't turn the ball? I mean, what happens when you don't get turnovers? And we saw that today. I mean, their defense was playing great. And then all of a sudden I didn't see the game, but a lot of people was calling for upsets in that particular game. I mean, you just enjoy the moment.
Absolutely. Thanks, DeAndre.
All right, Mark.
Have a good one. I appreciate it. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, what's on your mind?
What's up, Mark? This is Sam.
Hey, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Do you think that Cincinnati controls their own destiny, or do you think they still need a little bit of help to get them, into the playoffs?
Well, I guess the worst case scenario for Cincinnati would be Oklahoma wins out, so they're undefeated. Michigan wins out, or somebody in the Big Ten, Michigan or Michigan State would be the only two. One of them wins out, so they've got an undefeated Big Ten champ. You got an undefeated Big 12 champ. Alabama wins out and beats Georgia in the SEC championship game in a close game, so you get Alabama and Georgia both with one loss, and then you could have Wake Forest go undefeated. So yeah, they need some help. So I don't think they completely control their own destiny. No, that would be that's 5 teams in front of them right there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Wake Forest isn't really much of a threat, honestly. I mean, there is the chance that they win out, but I mean, so unlikely. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like the only thing that they really need to be afraid of is Alabama winning out and beating Georgia in the SEC title game, which I just don't see happening. But and then also, I guess it would be nice if like Ohio State were to win the Big Ten, or Iowa were to win the Big Ten at this point, so the Big Ten champion isn't undefeated. Speaking of Iowa, I'm not really too surprised with that game today that they lost to a Purdue team that isn't that good. I mean, Iowa seems to have gotten past, on turnovers and all that kind of stuff this year. And I mean, their offense just holds them back so bad. Like, I mean, I didn't see Iowa losing a game on their schedule, but I mean, seeing it happen isn't too surprising, honestly.
Nope. Not at all. This is the way they play football, and I don't think it's
It's just not a sustainable way to win games. Like, I mean, to just
not
rely
to win
on
every game,
turnovers and all that stuff. Yeah,
not to win every game. They will win a lot like that. They've got a tremendous defense. I still think they have a top 5 to 10 defense in the country, but they cannot have a pedestrian offense and win every game.
I mean, are they still the favorites to win the West, do you think?
Yeah, they're the slight favorites. They're the slight favorites.
I was looking at the standings today, and
they got to play Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Mixed up.
Yep, there's a lot of one-loss teams. So even Wisconsin with 2 losses, I don't know that anyone necessarily wants to play them. So. Yeah, if anything, Purdue controls the division.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah,
especially, I mean, from the preseason, it's crazy how the season has went. I mean, from Clemson being terrible, Wisconsin was expected to be a really good team. They're not good. I mean, not great. Another disappointing team I feel like is Indiana. They're not being talked about a whole bunch, but I mean, that's the team I thought was going to come in second in the Big Ten East, and they've been pretty disappointing also. But I think this has been a pretty fun season, honestly, just because of just how unpredictable it's kind of been.
I know. It's been fun. It has been fun.
I mean, and then to top it all off, I mean, seeing a group of 5 team make the playoff would be nice. And let's talk about the playoff for a second. Do you like the the exclusiveness of the playoff and how hard it is to get in, or do you think it needs to be expanded?
Expand it. It doesn't work. It's a horrible playoff system. It's not even a playoff system, first of all. It's an invitational.
Yeah.
You have to be invited to play in the playoff. It's not a playoff. It's an invitational. There should not be people selecting playoff teams.
Never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is by definition. I never really just thought about how it's just an invitation.
Yep. That's something we tend to break down during the off season and go through the way I would set it up and all that. So I'll readdress that in the off season from A through Z.
Yeah.
Because the whole scheduling system needs to be changed, which brings more legitimacy to the schedule and records for everyone. And then you have a playoff system in which you don't have people select a playoff.
Sure. One more thing before I let you go. Let's see if I can think of what it was. So I don't remember. All right, you have a good night.
Have a good one. Appreciate the call.
All right.
All right. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's George in Portland.
George, what's going on?
Not to be mistaken with George in Omaha.
Oh, of course not. We would never make that mistake.
Exactly. Okay, first thing, what in the hell are they saying? Everybody's going, let's go, Brandon. What are they talking about?
Do we really need to go into that? Look it up online.
No, listen, I really just found out like half an hour ago.
Look it up online.
But my kid sit here, he's laughing his ass off. He just told me I had no idea what that was all about. I'm like, that's funny, man. That's some funny shit.
Google that.
I know.
Don't talk about the Fuhrer like that.
Don't talk about that, yeah. All right. So anyway, Georgia got lucky, barely escaped Kentucky. We saw that.
Yeah, I was a bit uneasy about that. A bit on edge. That was a close one. Very lucky.
I have a lot of respect for Kentucky. I have a lot of respect for Kentucky. I really do. You have to admit, like, yeah, they're just year in and year out. That's a good, solid football team.
I like Kentucky. Good, solid football team. They ran into a buzzsaw that you get to see. Is it next week? The week after? Next week.
That was a brutal game. Georgia, it really is something else. I think, how are their uniforms allowed to be so red? Can we make our uniforms that blue and whatever we do? I mean, this is like the reddest red I've ever seen.
Might be the tint on your TV, George.
You're right. I got to turn down the tint. Oh, my God, Mark. I have one last chance left to save my season. We got to beat Georgia. I have 3 losses. There's nothing else to play for.
Yeah, it's pretty much, this is the only time to really find any kind of worth out of your season. It's going to have to happen right now.
I don't even care. I don't even care if we lose to FSU as long as we beat Georgia. Yeah.
Well, you might go to like Shreveport to a bowl game and win something there. How's that?
Do you know what I think is going to happen? I think we're going to win out, and Anthony Richardson's going to be our starting quarterback. He's Cam Newton 8.0. And that's just next year. Florida's going to be ranked number 1 going in, blah, blah, blah. It's over. Anthony Richardson is coming for you.
Okay. That'll be the shocker.
Oh, my God.
George has already laid down the gauntlet.
My brother.
Yes.
One of my brothers cheers for Washington. The other one cheers for Auburn. And they're calling me today going, who is that guy? Oh, my God. They say he can run 10 yards. And there's no way. They said he threw that ball to the other guy on purpose. They told him to because he's just that good, you know? Like, he's a monster. He's going to win the Heisman. Watch. He's going to have like 5 games and win the Heisman. Don't bet against Florida. We don't need a defense. We'll just outscore your ass. That's what
really?
I say.
Is that what happened today?
Yeah. Whatever. It's on now, dude. It's on. I was wrong. I have 3 losses now. Everybody got me. But that's just because Dan Mullen was playing the wrong quarterback. I don't know what he's tripping on. I want my coaches piss tested. They're on mushrooms or something. The Florida coaches are eating mushrooms. Anthony Richardson scored 80 yards on every play for the first 2 plays of the game, and they said, "Oh, he had a hamstring injury." Blah blah blah. We're gonna kill Georgia. We're gonna beat them by 20. We have a week off to get ready for this. I've been wrong before.
A few times on these calls, I've haven't necessarily taken note, but I recall a few times you may have been wrong. I've been wrong before too.
Trying to just don't go for the Georgia hype this week. Bet on Boise State or something. Pick a different game. Do not bet against Florida next week. We're off for a week. The next week after that. Oh my God, I'm so upset.
All right, George.
Anyway, Mark, there was like 20 good games today.
Good games.
I can't even get into
including the Florida
I'm still
LSU
having
game.
fun.
Good one.
I'm still having fun. I'm still watching football. I'm on the West Coast. I have football to 1 a.m., you know.
Well, George, my best to your Florida Gators the rest of the year. Let's not lose a 4th game. Let's really make this college football season interesting and knock off the dogs next week. That would be phenomenal.
I just want Stetson Bennett to play against us again, so me and Uncle Lou can just make the best video ever about Stetson Bennett versus Florida.
Okay.
Uncle Lou will be going, "We have 94 5-stars and a midget for a quarterback."
All right, George. Appreciate it.
All
Call
right.
back.
That's all I can hope for.
Talk to you soon.
Love you. Bye.
Next up, here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Oh, hello. This is Mark Rogers, voice of college football.
Absolutely, sir. How are you?
Hello. Oh, good. Did you think I coached a good game today?
Which game was that?
Go Tigers.
Thanks.
Did I coach a good game today?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. You think we're gonna make the playoffs?
Who's going to make the playoffs? Who do you think?
LSU football. Who you gonna make the playoffs?
Is who going to make the playoffs?
LSU.
LSU?
Yes.
It might be a little difficult to make it this year. Could be tough to get in this time.
Oh, not as long as I'm the coach.
Okay. Yes. Are you related in some way to Coach O? Or is this actually Coach O calling? And I didn't recognize your late night voice.
Oh, you didn't recognize me, Mark Rogers?
Well, it must be that I'm always hearing you on TV, never over the phone. I've never been this had this honor before.
I sound a little bit nasally on the phone, don't I?
We do appreciate your phone call, though. It's been an honor, sir. You should get some rest.
Honor with the voice. the voice of college football.
Yes.
It's been an honor. Oh, whoa. Do you think we're going to beat Ole Miss?
Well, I think that I would, as much as watching that game, would love to see you, Coach O, and Lane Kiffin have a couple beers together and see what you talk about.
Oh, I don't know. Shrimp.
We appreciate it. You better get your rest. You're getting up there in years. No. Rest your voice, and we will talk to you very soon.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you,
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate that.
Are they going to fire me?
I would tend to let you go, but I didn't expect you to do what you did today, so may keep you around for a few more weeks.
Let's go. All right, you have a good.
All right. This is where we've reached at this point on the channel. We get phone calls in from the likes of Coach O. Pretty amazing. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Dan from Jacksonville.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm good. What's going on?
Oh. So I've been watching college football for a while now. So I've been listening to the national writers. I guess they're supposed to be college football experts. And it seems like all of them don't watch the games, that everybody just go out with this one narrative they put out there, especially about this playoff, this 14 playoff.
Yep.
So I got a couple of questions for you, because I've been watching you for the last 2 or 3 months on YouTube. So I figured I'd try to call in to see if you had the same outlook. Is it just me? Is it me, or is it a narrative out there that they're just trying to push just for notoriety?
Okay.
Cincinnati. From what I see from the eye test, they're a good team. But do you think they deserve to be in the playoffs if it was to start today?
No.
Right. So I've been arguing this point for the last, and so they saying, so I tell the guys that co-workers of mine, I say, listen, if you take Texas A&M and you you give them Cincinnati schedule, what would Texas A&M record? They'll say,
7-0.
Right, and it'll be, if not more impressive, just as impressive as Cincinnati look. And I think the main part that nobody ever talk about, the reason why I don't think it's fair that they even being mentioned in the playoffs, is the small stuff throughout the season. When you in the SEC, the Big Ten, I ain't gonna say the ACC, but even with the ACC and the Pac-12, Big 12 for all that, the down battering and bruising you take from down to down, and you may have 3 guys out, 2 guys out, 3 starters out one Saturday. You know what I mean? Where you're in the ACC, even though it is football, but it's just not as physical. You know what I'm saying? And so I think they got an advantage from that standpoint. And then, like I say, people got them in their top 4 now, saying that if the season ended now, they'll put them in over Ohio State. Well, if I was a head coach, what I would say is, if that was to ever happen to me, don't ask me to play no out of conference games against Power 5 teams, because it hurts you. One of them teams gonna lose. You know what I mean? So why would I take that? Why would, just so the fans can have something to say and I can please the fans, but I lose at the end, because my only loss would be to Oregon, but I end up 5th in the standings at the end of the year. And a team like Cincinnati, our Boise State, are one of them teams, when all they have really technically, they got a 2-game schedule. You know what I mean? Especially like with this year, you had Indiana, which to me, and I may be wrong. You the expert, college expert, right? And I'm not saying it's an asterisk, but 2020 was sort of a fluke, college football wise, because there was no defense last year. So the all the stipulations they put in with for the COVID protocols and all that, it affected it. You could tell because this year the teams that were putting up numbers last year and the surprise teams, they are nowhere to be found this year. They are nowhere, and most of the teams that were surprise teams and putting up numbers last year had everybody come back. The only team that did was Ohio State and Alabama, but they got the talent to reload. But everybody else, you got the Indiana, the Notre Dame, you name it. All on that was putting up numbers last year. It's a total different year, and the defenses are kept. The defense caught back up to the offense.
So did you have any?
That's one of my biggest.
Yes, sir. So I think I got your point. Did you have any specific question in all that?
Yeah. So first, I don't know if you been asked this. Who are your 4 best teams? Not the 4 best teams, regardless of record, that you've seen play this year so far.
The 4 best teams in the country are Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and probably Oklahoma.
Okay. And what would you put Arizona State?
Arizona State?
Would they be in your top 10?
Arizona State? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, Arizona State.
I'd put them about 30th, if that.
Arizona State,
the team that just lost to Utah by 2 touchdowns tonight.
They lost tonight?
Yeah.
Oh wow! See, I just got off, but I didn't even go to Utah. Like I said, I was on YouTube. Yeah. They lost tonight. Well, that's Herman. That was for you. You get a lead and lay on it.
Even if they beat Utah tonight, I'm not putting any Arizona State anywhere close to one of the 10 best teams in the country. No.
I mean, talent-wise, they got everything you want. They got a good front four.
Except they don't beat anyone that's any good.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It comes down to coaching. It's like Herm played close to the vest to you know what I mean? Like he don't let them go out there and be what they're capable of being, in my opinion.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, the playoff should be reconfigured. We cover that all the time, but I won't go through it right now. But yes, Cincinnati, unfortunately, teams in the group of 5, I would like to expand the playoff system to include them. You need to either formally include them or formally exclude them, not tease them, insult them in any such way to include them in the rankings, but not include them in the playoff. Either include them formally, give them 1 spot, or completely exclude them and say, you know what? You don't play at this level. Go play your own playoff. One or the other. I don't have an issue with either one. Just do one or the other. Don't say, well, they're considered when they're really not considered. The schedule needs to be revamped. And again, these are things that we work on during the off season, but the schedule needs to be completely revamped, both in conference and out of conference. The scheduling process should be taken out of the hands of the individual teams and programs, and it should be structured differently.
So I got one more question.
Sure.
So I hear about LSU saying they want to fire their coach. Now I'm hearing rumblings about Florida talking about their coach needs to go.
Okay.
Of course, you're gonna have 7 to 8 different D1 big time universities want to get rid of their coach.
Yep.
My question is, in Miami, they talking about getting rid of Manny Diaz. Where you gonna find him? You know what I mean? Like if where you gonna find that? Who's out there? Like, is it 8 coaches out there that have filled these programs? You know what I mean? That'll change the way the programs look now. From 3 to 5 to maybe even 10 years down the road.
So you're basically saying, for all the openings that we're talking about, possibly LSU, Florida, USC has an opening, et cetera, who's going to get these jobs that are going to be qualified to upgrade these teams?
Right, but it came off like that. My apologies. I think I just got it right with it. My thing is, if you LSU fan and you're saying I want Ed Orgeron gone, well, you got a USC job open, right? You got and if he's a great coach, you got a couple of NFL jobs that's probably going to be open. So you got to pick between USC. Well, let's use Miami for an example. They fired Vanny Diaz, and LSU fired Ed Orgeron. Then you got NFL head coach vacancies. You got LSU going to be vacant. You got USC that's vacant. Miami's not going to get a top-tier coach over those 2 programs. You see what I'm saying?
I understand
Even
what you're
with
saying.
Florida, they talking about.
But for every vacancy, there are new people in the market. The coaching pool hasn't changed. Yeah. The number of coaches and the coaches we're talking about is the same pool of people, regardless of where the vacancies are.
But you're going to go, 7 of them programs going to go through the same thing, is what I'm saying.
If Miami has a capable administration that is capable of conducting a coaching search and interviewing qualified head coaches, there is no question that they should be able to hire a head coach who is decidedly better than Manny Diaz.
Yeah, but
that shouldn't be hard to do.
You can say the same thing about USC. You can say the same thing about USC. You can say the same thing about LSU. And that's what I was going to get. That was going to be my last point. My point was, it ain't necessarily the coaches. I mean, it is the coaches. But if the administration don't have an eye for what they're looking for what it's supposed to look like, then it don't matter who you hire, because you're going to go through this same thing year in and year out, in my opinion. And one more point. I want to make this point. Do Kirby Smart remind you of Les Miles in a way?
Does who remind me of Les Miles?
Kirby Smart. When Les first got to LSU, when he was in his prime with LSU, when they were recruiting top 5 in the country, they had the best defenses in the country, but they would not open it up. Remember his last year, the year before he got fired, they brought him back because he promised he would open the offense up, and he went right back into his shell, 3 yards in the cloud of death. It don't feel like that to you somewhat with Kirby Smart?
Well, I'll make a few points on both sides, both favoring Kirby Smart and, it's hard to believe now, but favoring Les Miles. One would be when Les Miles went into a shell and refused to open up the offense, he was not alone across college football. So it was just a different age in regards to offensive football in the game. You're talking 2006, 7, 8 in that range.
Right.
Versus what Kirby Smart's doing right now.
Right.
Kirby Smart has made some questionable decisions in big games, some isolated questionable decisions in big games, but in no way would I compare him in a time management or game management category to Les Miles. Les Miles used to make 3 or 4 major gaffes a year, and sometimes his team was talented enough to make up for it, but he would still make obvious game management faux pas, mistakes every year.
Yeah, but I mean,
I miss Les Miles because I used to produce Les Miles videos on like an every other week basis.
Right, but but when I say Simmons, like great defenses. Even Les Miles, like you're saying, college football hadn't graduated to the passing attacks like they are not back then. But he kept 2 or 3 wide receivers on his roster that made it to the NFL. So he saw something. Somebody on the staff saw something enough to do. He had the capability of doing more. It's like Kirby Smart does. I think when it get crunch time, like Florida, they should beat Florida like they beat Kentucky today, right? But I don't think he would allow himself to even, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's going to the big games with the mentality. If they beat our defense, then they deserve to win. Instead of the mindset of, well, if the defense off, they're gonna have to stop our offense instead of just stopping the running game. Because if you stop the running game, that is their offense.
Well, I appreciate the call, sir. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, man.
Thank you. Have a good one. All right, let's make sure we get to some more of these calls. I don't know what we got into there at some point. So basically, Kirby Smart, yes, the worst move or lack of move Kirby Smart has made to date was not recognizing that Justin Fields was one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the country. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello. What's up?
Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, it's Ammonia Wilder, man. I think it's the second time I've called you.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Ammonia Wilder.
Oh, okay. How you doing tonight?
Doing all right. All right, so I just want to touch on a few things real quick that I noticed in our Saturday of college football. First of all, Florida sucks. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. And there really ain't no debate there at this point. And, I mean, and we all knew it was about to play next, and we're not even going to get into that yet. We still got 2 weeks. But what I really want to get into is the end of that Tennessee game. And I kind of want to know your thoughts on that.
You want my thoughts on the end of the Tennessee game?
Yeah, the Tennessee Ole Miss game.
I just, I'm sorry to restate that. I'm just having a little hard time hearing you. So are you talking about the fan incident portion of the end of the Tennessee game? Or are we talking about the play calling and the approach to the...
Of course. Well, I mean, we all know what happened because, I mean, we all kind of figured Ole Miss would probably win that game, maybe by a touchdown, because the Tennessee could have scored and they would have won by 1 point, but they didn't, and that's Tennessee. But so about the most they got going for them right now is their fan base. I mean, that's really what's keeping that program alive is their fan base over the past 10 years. So I just kind of want to know what you think about like what happened tonight on that field.
Well, I think that, I was sitting here having conversations with all of you, so I wasn't able to lock in on exactly what was going on, but it was pretty obvious that there was a measurement. It did not favor Tennessee. I don't know if it was a correct measurement or not. The fans at the stadium don't know that either. That's what's a bit amusing about when fans lash out at the stadium over calls. They are the last people, unless they're able to catch it on one of the jumbo screens. Typically, they're the last people that can make a judgment call on anything because they see it worse than anybody in America. Anyway,
well, of course,
they lashed out about the spot of the ball and the measurement, which obviously, in a sense, could have ended the game. And so then they started, and then I think part of the state of their feelings, their attitude, their anger was the opponent as well. So had this game been against Arkansas, maybe they wouldn't have been as adamant. They would have still been mad because it was their team, but it was they truly wanted to beat Lane Kiffin. So when they saw that opportunity slip away and the refs apparently take that away from them, then this is what happens. And it's a 100,000 seat stadium. So you can have 5,000 people act out of 100,000. It's only 5%, but it's enough to cause that kind of disturbance.
It's still 5,000 people.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it's 500, whatever it is. It's a minority of people, but it's still a lot of people. Yes. So I think it's a horrible thing that people act out and possibly harm and hurt people over a call made at a sporting event.
Right. And honestly, I get that. And I can agree with what you're saying, but on the flip side of that, I mean, I'm a Georgia fan. I despise Tennessee, and I despise Tennessee fans. Okay. But, I mean, this is the type of shit that builds SEC rivals, man, especially cross division. Those are the type of games that makes not only college football, but SEC football great. Okay. And that's the same type of shit that went on in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And now all of a sudden ESPN's covering it. And people literally are acting, they are calling Tennessee fans trash. And I get that. But at the same time, man, you had a lot of drunk SOBs.
Well, yeah, the time of the game has something to do with it too.
At 10 o'clock at night, and they threw some Bud Light cans and a damn full mustard bottle apparently onto the field. And they were escorting the stadium like there was an active shooter. Like I get that it can be dangerous. Oh, don't forget the golf ball, by the way. Don't forget that golf ball. But I get that, yeah, it can get dangerous. It could get out of hand, but the fact is it didn't. And Tennessee still lost the game. So I think from what I've seen from the other fan bases and people in general, calling out Tennessee fans, saying they're trash and that shit can't. Man, I think sometimes people just need to take it for what it is, and just because it's entertainment at the end of the day. Okay, nobody actually got hurt, nobody got killed. Just lighten up a little bit and enjoy what's on your TV screen and soak it in, because we don't get a lot of college football throughout the year.
Then why don't we hold the morons that did that to the same standard and tell them this is just entertainment? It's not life and death. Then why are you chucking bottles at people?
I'm not saying do that every game. I'm not
just every other game, or
do that every game.
The first game of the month, or which games are we supposed to do that at?
The fact, no. Yes, we have to make sure that things don't happen so people don't get hurt. We have to take those measures. But at the same time, as people, college football fans, nobody got hurt. I mean, it got a little rowdy. I mean, you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, okay? And you got somebody that strolled in into 100,000 people that actually give a shit about their team, even though they've been bad over 10 years, and they've been drinking a little, and some shit got thrown. It's not like anybody died, and I ain't saying do that every game.
Well, what games are that's supposed to be allowed? Like, is that?
I didn't say allow it. Well, what I'm saying, people are acting like 9/11 happened. Okay,
well,
my point.
Yeah, obviously it doesn't compare to anything like that or a lot of other things. But just because somebody doesn't get hurt or nobody gets killed doesn't mean that there aren't people that are acting like complete morons.
Yeah, and there's morons in this world. So what are we going to do? Ban all the morons? I mean, you can't
ban them before they actually get into the stadium and do it. But that doesn't mean that this should happen. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world either. But I don't understand I don't understand your viewpoint, sir. Let me make a few statements
when you
here.
Get that many people together,
sir, let me make a few statements here. You've made your statement. I understand you've said that about 18 times. So,
I mean, shit happens.
So a lot of things happen that we could shrug our shoulders and say, That happens. So
and it's not the end
people
of the
get
world.
drunk and
I
run
mean,
into telephone
how
poles and hit people. Does that mean we should just say, nah, shit happens?
I mean, well, what about the South Carolina game a few years ago when they were?
We can all go on and on and on about
choking
things that have
kids.
happened at sporting events that shouldn't happen. I don't depend on, unlike you,
I'm not
apparently,
even
I don't
talking to
depend
you.
on a bunch of people throwing bottles at a football game to make that a rivalry. That's not my criteria for a rivalry or great football.
Rivalries are unique. Just because a rivalry starts that way into 2021 doesn't mean it started that same way in the 1990s.
Sure, but these two teams will never be a rival because they only play every 7 years. So they're not going to be a rival.
Well, I mean,
it's kind of hard to be a rival.
You don't know that because if you got two teams coming to the SEC, the SEC is about to be divided up.
Sure.
You don't know how often those teams are going to play. And hell, after that game, they might make it a rivalry. And hell, you'll get views, you'll get money. And they'll fish.
If this
they
incident
will fish off that all day long.
If this incident tonight causes the SEC to restructure their divisions and their scheduling system, then they're more moronic than the people that were throwing the bottles. If that impacts their division alignments.
I said you have two teams coming in, as in Texas and Oklahoma. The SEC is about to restructure their divisions. I mean, you have to, because as it stands right now, Georgia and Texas A&M have played once in 9 years or something like that.
Yes.
So if you add two more teams in, you're going to get a team playing another division team once in every 11 years or 10 years, however you want to. Still, my point is, there's going to be some type of it's going to be divided differently. So my point is, you don't know how often Tennessee and Ole Miss might play. I mean, you really don't, because we don't even know how that's going to look yet. So we can't say that, hey, down the road, 10 years from now, after Texas and OU is joined, and these teams play it like every other year, or every 4 years, and that's going to be a highlight on ESPN every time they play, and you can't tell me it's not going to be.
So because this is going to be a highlight on ESPN, this is a good thing.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I said take it for what it is.
Take it for what is it? It's a bunch of morons who acted out at a football game. It wasn't the end of the world or the worst thing we've ever seen, but it was still idiotic, stupid, and they should be thrown out of the stadium for acting like idiots and morons and doing things that could hurt people. That's what should be done. It's not the worst thing we've ever seen, but it's still not the type of behavior that we should have at sporting events. Because I've taken my kids to sporting events and seen less than that, but I still didn't want my 8-year-olds at a sporting events where things like that were happening. So we need to take that into consideration. And it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's still stupid. And if this has to happen for a rivalry to start, well, then that's pretty sad as well.
I didn't say that has to happen for a rivalry to start. I said these are the types of things that happen, and then that sparks a rivalry between two teams.
Okay, so your point in all this is
this is going to wind up being a rivalry, especially while Lane Kiffin is there.
Okay.
First of all,
Lane Kiffin, based on his past, may only be at Ole Miss for 2 more years. Who knows? So if this rivalry is dependent on Lane Kiffin, then
it's really according to how much he wins there. Because if I had to guess, they would probably pay him if he wins. And I think Ole Miss, that administration and that
it's partially dependent on how much he gets paid there and what other jobs are open and are offered to him. Well, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Have a good night.
All right, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You too.
All right. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's actually Marty from the Penn State recap show. How's it going?
Marty, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, good. Hey, I wanted to call in. I know I was a little late joining the show tonight, and I know you kind of touched on it a couple callers ago, but then I'm still kind of trying to recover from that last caller in the Tennessee and all that nonsense.
Well,
but
I think if I can
West
interpret
right
something for you, Marty, before you continue, for those whiteouts to be worth
Yeah, go ahead.
anything, for those whiteouts to have any value or really be at their optimum peak value, you need some bottle throwing along with those whiteouts because they're just not very effective.
apparently next.
So
Apparently next year.
get some
or
bottle
actually
throwing
for
involved.
The whiteout in a couple weeks for the whiteout in a couple weeks against Michigan. Apparently, we got to bring mustard bottles. So
Absolutely. Otherwise, it's not a rivalry.
We're not capitalizing on it, right? But anyway, the Big Ten West, and I know you kind of touched on this a couple callers ago, but the Big Ten West right now is wide open, and I'm just curious to get your opinion. I know you said you still think Iowa is probably the favorite in the West, but you look at Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Northwestern. All five of those teams control their own destiny in the Big Ten West. So I think coming down the stretch here, we could really have one of the more kind of under the radar stories in college football is going to be this Big Ten West race, where I think, like I said, you got five schools that control their own destiny. It's going to be a lot of fun, and with Purdue after today and knowing what David Bell can do, it wouldn't stun me to see Purdue kind of emerge from the ashes and potentially play for a Big Ten championship in a couple of weeks.
I cannot disagree with you. I believe that based on what I've seen, based on what we've all seen out of that division, that Iowa, Purdue, Minnesota, and Wisconsin are the best teams in some order, but they're all beatable by other teams. And certainly, unless one of them gets extremely hot / lucky, will be winning games against each other in some round robin fashion, and we will have a multiple loss team win the division. Probably a 7-2 at best team. Probably 7-2 would be my best guess estimate on the winner of the Big Ten West. We'll go 7-2, and I don't know who that team's going to be. Again, I still think it's probably Iowa as the best team, but not necessarily. I picked Iowa and Wisconsin, which was pretty conventional wisdom, to tie for the Big Ten West at the start of the season with 7-2 records. But yeah, based on what we're seeing now, I don't know what to tell you. We could argue for any one of those four teams, I believe. The one thing that I will tell you, Marty, I'm sorry to, I'll make one last point.
Yeah, you're good.
The one thing I'm most certain about is the defense at Wisconsin and the defense at Iowa being the same every week to week, generally the same unit playing at the same caliber, generally.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's why it still wouldn't shock me to see, as much as they've struggled on offense this year, to see Wisconsin emerge and win the Big Ten West, even Iowa, for the offensive shortcomings they've had, to see them emerge and win the West. Because I know you will definitely agree with me that if Sean Clifford does not get hurt last week, Penn State definitely wins that game, and Iowa is in a lot of trouble right now in the West. But hey, injuries are part of football. It's part of sports. You can take that into consideration. Where I think that right now that Sean Clifford injury has really left the door open for the Big Ten West to be still wide open, and it's going to make it a lot of fun for Big Ten fans down the stretch. And I couldn't agree more with Iowa and Wisconsin with their defenses. I think ultimately they're probably the two best teams. I think whoever wins that game probably wins the division, because they're, again, both of them, their defenses are going to keep them in every single game. But with the defense thing, I think, again, that's where I think Purdue cannot be overlooked. Through 6 games now, Purdue has only allowed 86 points. That defense is playing extremely well, and I think a lot of credit has got to go to Jeff Brom for making a change this past offseason with that defense.
he knew it was a problem. He brought in Brad Lambert, who's been a terrific defense coordinator. And I think the Boilermakers are just really flying under the radar right now. And they have a terrific defense. They've got a great playmaker in David Bell. And it wouldn't stun me at all to see Purdue kind of emerge here and potentially be that team that plays in Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, whoever it might be in Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating for the first time in quite some time. And I know Ohio State has not won every division championship and conference championship throughout the last decade, but they've generally been the best team. There's no question about that. And it was pretty much, we played an entire Big Ten season to either just watch them trample everyone or see what kind of situation would have to come together that they would lose one game. And I still find this to be a rather amusing statistic that aside from the Luke Fickell year in 2011, Ohio State's never lost more than one game in the Big Ten since 2004. So their worst record in the Big Ten is 7-1, going back 17 years. So basically, the whole conference race has been either Ohio State's going to smash everyone or who is going to be able to have a really good season and beat them a la Penn State in 2016 head-to-head in some fashion. And that's been the Big Ten for the last decade. But this year, it could still turn out to be that, but it doesn't appear that. It appears as though there are too many capable teams and that Ohio State may not be quite as good as they usually are.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, coming into the season as a Penn State fan, I fully expected Penn State to lose to Ohio State. And I will say, if Sean Clifford is healthy, I think Penn State is very capable of beating Ohio State, which some of the preseason when I said. So again, goes back to what you said, Mark, with Ohio State maybe not quite as good as we anticipated. And I think Penn State can exploit that defense in some areas. But yeah, it's a fun year, I feel, to be a Big Ten fan because we have, 4 or 5 of the top 10 teams in the country. And at the same time, the East and the West are both still wide open. So it's just, as a Big Ten fan personally, it's a lot of fun to see a year where the conference is getting a lot of pub and seeing the conference being put up right there with the SEC, maybe better overall this year than the SEC, which is just fun to see because I have felt for a long time that the Big Ten never really got the recognition it deserves. So to see it finally getting it this year is just, it feels good as a fan of the Big Ten team to finally see the conference as a whole getting the recognition and getting the pub that it deserves as a deep and very talented conference.
So make no mistake about it, that Purdue final is not good for the Big Ten. That's not a good thing for the Big Ten to take down an undefeated team. So it's not a good result for the Big Ten, but it's just inevitable. It's going to happen. Teams are going to be taken down from the ranks of the unbeaten. But to have multiple teams in contention for college football playoff bids, then obviously you want some kind of separation between your very best teams and everybody else, and not what seems to be developing in the West, which is this quagmire of maybe 8-4, 9-3 teams possibly, especially once one of them emerges and plays a conference championship game against your Big Ten East winner. You would rather have that team be an elite looking team, at least 12-0, 11-1, rather than some Northwestern team from 2 years ago that shows up at 8-4 to play the Big Ten East winner. Although hopefully that Big Ten East winner is not going to need style points. Just go win the game and you're in the playoff. But yeah, it is fascinating. And to your point about the SEC versus the Big Ten, I understand the argument. I also take part in it to a certain extent to say, if you take everything into consideration, meaning the talent we know that moves on to the NFL and the talent that is ranked by recruiting ratings coming into college football, that the SEC still, if you take all those measurements, would be the best conference in America. However, if all we are doing for one particular season, this season, is evaluating these conferences based on the play on the field, then it's a really difficult and fun argument because it's not clear cut. It's not what it's been for the last 4 or 5 years or more that the SEC is the best conference. The SEC did not go out in non-conference play and just, browbeat everyone and crush everyone. And there's a decided gap between the SEC results and the next best conference, most likely has typically been the Big Ten. It's a difficult distinction to make for either one of them, but they are the two best conferences in college football.
Yeah, I agree. They have the two best conferences, and like you said, excuse me, that with the Big Ten versus SEC thing, yes, you got to take non-con into consideration. That's part of this move with Penn State getting that win over Auburn. But even in the Big Ten West, like you said, I agree that the Purdue win overall is a negative for the conference because had you gone to conference champion weekend with a 12-0 Iowa playing, say, 11-1 Penn State or 11-1 Ohio State, you were looking at a legitimate scenario where the Big Ten could have gotten 2 teams in the playoff. And obviously, it's not going to happen now. But I still think the depth of the Big Ten, like if you would say, I think Ohio State, most people would say, are very capable of beating both Alabama and Georgia. And I think if you take Penn State, you look at the SEC, you could probably throw Penn State and probably Michigan in there as well. Outside of Alabama and Georgia, there's probably not a team in the SEC you would feel comfortable taking on neutral field to beat Penn State or Michigan with all teams at full strength. So again, like I said, just for me as a guy who roots for a team in the Big Ten and in turn likes to see the Big Ten do well, it feels good to see a year where we really do see the Big Ten getting the national pub, getting 4 or 5 teams in the top 10, and really, I feel at least finally getting the recognition that the conference as a whole does deserve. Because Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, who yes, they have not really played a tough schedule yet, but to their credit, they've beaten everybody. You can't fault a team for having an easy schedule, but they come out and beat everybody. There's something to be said about that. So I think the conference as a whole is in a good spot right now, and it's just, again, as a guy who roots for a Big Ten team, it's good to see the Big Ten as a whole doing really well.
Yeah, Marty, the worst thing that could happen for the conference now that the West seems to be, again, headed toward, a series of losses and round robin scenario, the worst thing would be for the Big Ten East to fall into that, and Penn State beats Michigan State, but Michigan beats Penn State, and Ohio State beats Michigan, but they lose to Michigan State, and you emerge with a couple 10-2 teams, and people are sitting here at the end of the year that know college football and say that might be the best conference, but we can't get a team into the playoff.
I totally agree that scenario would be a disaster for the Big Ten, but ultimately I feel the Big Ten itself is so deep. I really do believe whoever wins on October 30th in Columbus, between the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions, whoever wins that game is probably going to win the conference. And most likely, at that point, you're looking at finishing 11-1, win the Big 12, or win the Big 10, 12-1. You're going to make a playoff at that point. But like I said, I think whoever wins in Columbus Halloween weekend between the Buckeyes and the Lions wins the Big 10, goes to the playoff. But if that team, if everyone wins that game, goes on to lose in the Big Ten championship, it would definitely be a disaster for the conference because, like you said, you could make that argument, yeah, you're the deepest conference, you're the best conference. With 2 losses, you may not get in. But if there was ever a year that a team with 2 losses was going to get into the playoffs under the 14 format, and I know there's something you touched on earlier, and I agree with you with that the 14 format is not good. We need to beat at least 8 teams, But under the 14 format, if there's every year for a 2-loss team to get in, it's definitely this year. I really struggle to see a scenario where the Big Ten champion, unless it's something crazy where like Northwestern, Minnesota, whoever it is, gets into the Big Ten championship game at 9-3, wins it, and we have a 3 or 4 loss conference champion. That aside, I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where the Big Ten champion does not make playoffs this year.
I'm with you, Marty. I appreciate the call, man.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Have a good night, and I always enjoy listening to the live call-in show on Saturday nights, and maybe I'll call more often and spark some conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Marty. Appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good night, Mark.
So that was actually Marty Leap. He's on Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation, the Penn State site for on SB Nation. And Marty and Tim Aiden anchor our post-game Penn State coverage. So we got a Penn State channel, everyone. Head on over there, subscribe. And if you want to grow the channels and you don't like Penn State, still subscribe. Get us past 1,000 subs. And then once we're safely above 1,000 subs, you can unsubscribe. But to any of our channels, Iowa would be the forerunner for this because I was growing quickly. Subscribe to our Iowa channel, and then you can unsubscribe after they get past 1,000. So if you just want to help us build out our network here, we would appreciate that greatly. But Marty and Tim Aiden host our Penn State post-game coverage. After every Penn State game, they are on the Penn State channel and the Big Ten channel, if not the main channel here with Penn State post-game. And I believe the Nittany Lions have a date with the Fighting Illini, if that's what we're allowed to call them these days, of the Brett Bielema, Fighting Brett Bielemas possibly would be a more apt nickname these days. And as Mike is telling us that I need sleep and that the Iowa channel is fantastic. I can agree with you on both accounts, Mike. The Iowa channel is fantastic, and I could probably use some sleep. I appreciate everybody being on the line. I guess we're going to take one more call here at the Voice of College Football. This is the final call of the night. Let's make it a good one. You're up.
Hey, Mark, I know you normally don't like to take second phone calls, but I got a beef with you, man.
Okay.
Why is it all of a sudden you say it was a good win for Purdue, but now it hurts Iowa?
No.
Isn't that like a double standard?
It hurts the Big Ten. It's not good for the Big Ten. If this was the National Football League, it wouldn't matter. If this was the NFL, it wouldn't matter because there'd be a guaranteed playoff spot for the top team. But that's not the case. So when teams, when they keep winning against each other, beating each other, that's not good for any conference. It shouldn't be that way. We should have a playoff system that's legitimate and objective, but we don't. So there have to be top level teams, and Iowa was one of those teams. Now they showed today that they're obviously not invincible, and they could lose 2 or 3 more games. Who knows? So that was probably inevitable, but I'm just saying it's not good for the Big Ten because the Big Ten needs, well, a slam dunk would be an undefeated champion, or the next best would be a 1-loss champion. And that just takes out one more option. Or Iowa, let's say they run the table and Purdue loses somewhere else and Iowa still wins the West, but then they go to the Big Ten championship game with a loss. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
It's not good for people rooting for the Big Ten to place a team in the playoff. That's all I mean. I have no rooting interest in the game. I could care less who won the game.
Mm-hmm. But my thing is, isn't that getting ready to happen in the next month in the Big Ten East as well? Everybody's going to start, like with Ohio State getting ready to play Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan. The same thing with Michigan, Penn State. They're all getting ready to play each other. So when is water going to find this level?
Yeah, that's what I was stating that to the last caller, Marty. I said worst case scenario for the Big Ten is that with Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State all playing each other here in the next month, that they beat each other instead of one team emerging as the best team, like has happened almost every year, where Ohio State just beats all those other teams regardless of how good they are, and they're sitting there at 12-1 and the Big Ten champion. Then that's that. But if you've got a scenario where Ohio State beats Michigan State, but they lose to Penn State, but Penn State beats Michigan, but Michigan beats, and they all win against each other in some round robin fashion, then your winner of the division is going to have 2 losses, and you may play yourself out of a playoff.
Sure. I see your point and stuff like that, but somehow, some way, I still think that the Big Ten is going to get a team in to the playoffs.
I'm sorry, what was that last point, Michael?
I still think as weak as the ACC and the Pac-12 is,
yes,
the Big Ten, even with 2 losses, they're still going to get a team in the playoff this year.
I would not disagree with you. That could be the case. That could be the case, and that's a judgment call by the committee to say, you know what, Penn State won the Big Ten, especially if it's this scenario. Penn State won the Big Ten. They went 11-2. But one of those losses, they lost Sean Clifford when the game was 17-3 in Iowa. They probably would have won that game because they lost their starting quarterback and lost a 2-touchdown lead. So that was kind of a tainted loss. And Penn State had to go through Ohio State, Michigan State, Iowa again, let's say in the Big Ten championship game, or Purdue or whomever. And yes, and they beat Auburn in the non-conference schedule, and Auburn looks like a pretty good team. Yeah, absolutely. A Big Ten 2-loss Big Ten champion could be absolutely elevated over a 1-loss ACC or Pac-12 champion. Sure.
Okay, I know this is a far-fetched and crazy idea, but say Purdue, I mean, like, they're the 8th. Like, I heard like a lot of people not giving respect to their defense this year. Why, I have no idea, because they're playing a lot better. If Purdue starts getting hot, runs the table, wins the Big Ten championship, is it out of the realm of possibility they can be 1-4 in the CFP?
With 2 losses?
With 2. Yeah, they go 11-2.
Well, you lost to Notre Dame by 2 touchdowns, which we both know, you and I, that the game was closer than that, but still, that was the final score, which I thought was a really good game. Anyway, lost to Purdue or Notre Dame on the road, lost to Minnesota by a touchdown. Okay, well, your best scenario there is obviously you got to win all the games. On top of that,
or do you think it'll be like a... Go ahead, sorry.
So in doing so, you beat Ohio State. So then you would not play them most likely in the Big Ten championship game. So I'm just laying out the best case scenario for you getting to a playoff with 2 losses. You want Michigan or Michigan State to go undefeated. You want a undefeated.
Well, yeah, but you got to remember, Mark. You got to remember.
Oh, you got to play Michigan State.
I mean, Purdue plays Michigan State.
Okay, so then it's got to be Michigan. Then you need Michigan to go undefeated. That would help you considerably to beat a undefeated Michigan team in the Big Ten championship game. It's number 1. Number 2 is obviously Notre Dame has a great season, so that looks like a respectable loss if they go 11-1. Number 3, Minnesota, the same thing. Let's say you finish. What do you have? 1 Big Ten loss. You go 8-1 in the Big Ten. Minnesota goes 7-2. So that's, again, that helps your loss status. And you got a great win against Ohio State, Michigan State, Iowa. All those teams are like top 10 or 15 in the country. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But we're talking about as it states in the good book, threading a camel through the eye of a needle, type scenario.
Yeah.
We could be talking about those all night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see it personally happening myself, but is there a chance Purdue, if they say like they go 11-2, can get a New Year's 6, or do you think they'll go out to Pasadena?
Well, sure. If you're the Big Ten champion or the Big Ten champion goes to the playoff, then you're going to go to Pasadena. Sure.
Okay, but you don't. Okay, I was just wondering stuff like that because, like, you was talking about that. Wait a minute, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it's a slim chance with the 2 losses, but you're talking to a team that should really be what 5-1 right now, in your opinion.
Who should be?
Purdue.
Instead of 4-2?
Yeah.
Well, regardless of what they should be, that's what they are. Why don't we play out these Purdue playoff scenarios in about 3 or 4 weeks? Win about 4 more games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just get past next Saturday against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get Horvath back.
All right, Michael. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Take care, man. See you.
Okay, we know we have come to the conclusion of the show when we're talking about Purdue's playoff scenarios. That has certainly marked the end of the line. I failed to read a super chat earlier. It was about Michigan State. Mark, give Michigan State some credit. It was nicely worded. I don't want to misrepresent it, but it was something about Michigan State and if they are legit or whatever. Yeah, Michigan State is a legit top 15 team in the country. Are they a legit playoff team? I do not believe so. They can disprove me very easily starting in a week. Who do they have next? They've got a game again. They got to play Purdue now. People are going to be marking that down on their schedule. Purdue. So Michigan State's got plenty to work through. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and they barely beat Indiana today. So, yeah, that was not the most convincing win in the world against about the 50th or 60th best team in the country. Wedgie Ocean, 2016 Penn State beat Ohio State head-to-head and won the Big Ten championship, but Ohio State makes the playoffs over them. Name a bigger playoff robbery. There probably is not one. Hang on. Except that Penn State team did lose 2 games. They did lose to Michigan 42-10, and Ohio State had a better overall resume. So, Wedgie Ocean, I fully support your statement because I was sitting here, or I believe I was seated like 40 or 50 feet away on the other end of this floor at the time, ranting and raving that Penn State should be in the playoff. The videos are chronicled. Despite my Ohio State allegiance, I said Penn State should be in the playoff, not Ohio State. Clearly stated that, went on for days and days and days. Totally agree. But there was an argument. Penn State had the Big Ten championship. Penn State had the head-to-head win. Okay. Ohio State had a better resume. They beat better teams. They had to go to a top 10 Wisconsin team on the road and win, and they went to a top 10 Oklahoma team and won. So they had a better record, 11-1. So there was an argument. But like you, I went with the Penn State argument. Now, there could be an argument made that UCF should have been in the playoff, but that's a different deal because of levels of play. All right. And you understand that you would have been the first and only 2-loss team to make a playoff. So it's not like it was some kind of slam dunk robbery, but I get your point. And again, I argued the same thing. All right, everyone. We'll be back here Monday night at the latest for a call-in show, but you know me, we could do it before then. Also, my top 25 that everyone together actually makes sense. And it's going to be a tough one to make up with everything that's happening in college football. And what do we do with that Cincinnati team that plays nobody? All right. Appreciate everybody that's here. Thank you so much for the support. Please subscribe to the other channels. If you've not subscribed to this channel, you got to do that and hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. All right. Thank you so much for that. Have a great night. College football is amazing. We'll see you soon.